Got my mute button working.
Yeah. David, any updates? Let us know. Nothing on YouTube right now.
Yeah, we are on YouTube. We're just somewhere else on YouTube because the live streaming app wouldn't connect. So I didn't have a choice but to do a separate stream. So we are live, but we're just not where we should be.
Do we know where we are?
We're on the page. I mean, I can give you all the link. We're on our on our Who's He What's It page. Here, I'll pop the link in the chat.
Yeah, got it. It just refreshed.
Yep.
Yeah, we're in gallery.
I know we're in gallery. I know.
Grumpy.
No, I'm not grumpy. I'm frustrated with this app. I want it to work so well and so much. And because when it works, it's great. But I just, like, the reason I was so late is I couldn't even get it to start I don't know. But we're here. It's live, he says. It's alive.
I'm afraid I'm just lazy. I just use the web presenter, Blackmagic web presenter, to send it to YouTube and be done with it.
Yeah, well, you're fancy. See, I'm not that fancy. Okay. Well, we don't have any dancing music to start us off. I'm not sure the show can even continue. I mean, I'm not. What are we gonna do? I guess we're just starting. Are we just starting? There's a hot debate, by the way, in the Ecamm community. There's a big debate about countdowns. Like whether you should have a countdown before your show or not. Ray says no. I do a countdown mostly because
I'd say no.
I do a 2-minute countdown. It's not for the audience. It's not because I'm expecting anyone to show up. It's for me. It's because that tells me to get my act together and get ready to,
That's,
2 minutes. 2 minutes is fine. 5 minutes is terrible. Watching Tony struggle while he's got, he's on camera before the show starts. It makes me nervous for Tony. But 2 minutes is good, but anything longer, especially since it goes to YouTube and some have 10-minute countdowns.
Oh, that's
and in YouTube, for trying to find the beginning of the show is a pain.
Right. Yeah, 2 minutes. 2 minutes doesn't bother me. By the way, Fatness says that we're having some audio sync issues. He's asking what the app was. The app is, it's a Zoom app. It's called Live Stream. Is it called Live Stream? I don't even know. Yeah, it's called Live Streaming. And I met with the developer. It's a Zoom thing, and I met with Andy, and I met with the developer once. It sounds to me like it's kind of a side project because it doesn't get a lot of love. And when it works, it's brilliant. When it doesn't work, it's not.
So just going back so I can have my opinion in here too. It is normal in the broadcast world to have 15 minutes up before you're up. And that is to make sure that you are checking everything last minute and you're
not on the air.
2 minutes too.
Not on the air.
Absolutely on the air.
No.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're feeding.
You're talking.
You're
past
feeding,
each other.
but none of the stations are actually showing you live.
Correct. Right.
Yeah.
Sure, but again, there's expectancy. Well, let's put it this way: the top 5 events at CES this week, everybody was up either at least 15 minutes live on YouTube before starting.
But Mike, I think the key is, in at least in the Ecamm world, the thinking was, in the live streaming world, let's say, the thinking was, let's give 10 minutes or 5 minutes or 20 minutes or however many minutes so that our audience can arrive.
Correct.
That was the thinking. And that I don't buy into. The idea that I'm giving a countdown so that I get my S together and I'm sitting and I'm looking and whatever, that to me is very helpful. Also because I always have this thing where I'll press go live and it takes a second and then it kind of goes, but like, did it start? I don't know. And then I feel like an idiot. At least if I have 2 minutes of silly music playing, I can check, I can make sure it's streaming correctly. Then I can, that's all.
But it
But
could
then
be
the ability to trim that.
And you can
Yes.
go and trim it, right?
Right. And
Although
which
I find
just-
that a major pain to be honest
Right.
with you, because first of all, it's not available right away. When I'm done with the stream, I want to go in, trim it, and be done. I don't want to forget about it. It takes 24 to 48 hours. You know what else I really wish YouTube had? I really wish you could not just trim the beginning and the end. I wish you could cut something out of the middle and make that a different video. You can't do that. You can make edits to a video and it'll affect the original video, but you can't, like, for example, a service, and I want to cut the sermon out and make that a separate video. I have to download the video. I have to splice it and then re-upload. It's a major pain.
There are some services that is quite popular in the influencer world and also in the gaming world where they will give you quote unquote highlights. So if you want like instant replays of, like in the gaming world, there's a service that will actually record as you are sending it. So basically it's a loop through. You will send it to them and they'll loop it back to YouTube. And what they are doing is recording it all. And then they will have an AI generator actually generate the content that they feel based on your information that you give the system to be able to give you a highlight reel of the best of, or anything, you tell the AI system to do.
Right.
There are a few services out there. So it will literally, if you say, give me, a 10-minute video of, here's the full video, but out of that, give me the 10-minute highlights. So it's similar to what you also can get on the Zoom platform, where it will cut out certain things and actually put in markers.
Yeah.
It's similar to that. And also, and then that video can be uploaded as an additional video to the live. What a lot of people will do is that once that video is up, they will take down the live as the archive now and actually have that as the actual archive.
Yeah. Tony, let's come to you, but can I just put Ray Harwood, can I put you on notice? Can you talk with us a little later about the new ability to switch from pre-recorded to live, that whole thing you posted about?
What I'm calling, Zoom doesn't really have a term for it, but I call it with hyphens, Simulive to live.
Right. So maybe later
the ability
on
to do that.
Yeah. So later on, if you could kind of bring us all up to date on that, because that was kind of a big update that came out.
I'll tell you what I know. Let me follow on our original topic, and that is having a leader. The issue I don't think we actually addressed is, what if you've got a webinar with thousands of people? What is the join rate after you hit the blue button to allow attendees into the webinar? How many of them join per minute? And to me, that tells you whether you ought to have at least some sort of a lead in for one of those very large webinars. Does anybody know?
You're right. We didn't talk about that, but can I just also throw in, I don't know the answer to that. It also takes Zoom some time to get everyone in. Like they don't.
Yes, well, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah,
they can be all queued up. You can have 2,000 people, 2,000 people waiting, and you click the blue button, and I think it takes maybe 1 minute for every 500 people or something like that. So if you've got 3,000 people, you got to wait 6 minutes before everybody who was in line can get into the auditorium.
I would suggest, I just ran one for the Boy Scouts last weekend, and we had 1,000 people, and it took a good 10 minutes to get everyone in.
And I suggest that you plan a pre-show program and let that run to cover that there's actual content to reward those that are on time.
Yeah. Well, they were on
time. Not just a countdown.
That's a different right, Ray. We're saying they're all on time.
Well, I understand that, but you're going to actually start the show when you've got the preponderance of the people, you've pushed the button, you're waiting for them. I understand that part. So if you create 3 5-minute pieces that you can run as people are getting ready, I think it's better than watching you sit there, pick your nose, getting ready, watch a clock come down and what have you. I think
it's like going to the theater. It's just like going to the theater for a movie. There ought to be stuff on screen that kind of keeps people entertained.
Yeah, and that's fair.
Your movie starts in 10 minutes.
Sell popcorn.
And that's fair. But, Ray, your question is spot on. It's how fast can they join? Does Zoom let them actually come into the session?
And I think that makes sense for a meeting where your people are alive, but if you're doing the replay like on YouTube, like that's where the countdown stuff gets annoying.
Absolutely.
So I'm Fatness from YouTube is saying it could take up to 3 minutes for a 10,000 person webinar. Robert says my rule of thumb is 150 per minute for webinars. That's fascinating.
I don't doubt that. Yeah.
Yeah. Really interesting. Okay. Well, so we'll have a continue with our 2-minute countdown and the great music. Tony, you had your hand up before.
Yes, I was just going to speak briefly on what I'm doing for my small worship service. We are doing 2 recordings, and I do one recording that is just the sermon. And
you record the sermon at the same time, but separately.
I record the full service. I have one recorder that does the full service, and then one recording that does just the sermon.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
Yeah. And I get around it, David, by I also record locally, so I don't have to download it to edit it.
Right. And see, to me, I don't know. I've jumped on the live to tape or live to whatever bandwagon. I never want to edit, ever. Like if I can't get it out in the first try, it's not worth sharing. If I wasn't prepared enough to do it well in the first time, then so.
That's where you have staff, David, that does that.
Right. Exactly. That's right. I have staff. Hey,
Paid staff.
Can we just quickly let's just make the rounds real quick. We never said hello. I'm sorry. Ray, how's it going?
This Ray says, hi, everything's fine here in Central Florida. Our prayers are for our friends that are in California that are just undergoing Armageddon. And we're concerned
Are any of us on the West Coast? Any of us here in this meeting? I don't think so.
Just the Edelsons, and they're in their car driving from Vegas. They may not be in good contact, but they're driving from CES back to Monterey.
Wow.
And I would assume that if they had news for that, John would jump in.
Yeah. We did have last night on the rundown, Tamra lives in LA. She's about 7 miles away from the evacuation zone. So she was safe for now. But she said it's just crazy over there. So thank you for mentioning that, Ray. We're definitely thinking about everyone. Oh my Lord. And here's John Adelson.
Speaking of John Adelson.
Here's John in his car. He looks like he's in the passenger seat though.
Always. Bobby's the driver in life itself. And not
John,
just in the Tesla.
John, we can't hear you. I'm wondering why. You are connected to audio, but for some reason we can't hear you. Well, we'll let you work on that. As long as you're safe, that's all we care about. All right. So sorry. So Ray and Ray Harwood, I'm coming you last so that you can do your thing. Mike, how are you, sir?
Doing good. It was a busy CES week for us here. So just to reiterate the countdown scenario, I agree entirely with Ray, but whatever you put in that 15 minutes beforehand, which again, all the broadcast guys did before, the one specifically that really intrigued me this week was Delta Airlines broadcasting live from the Sphere inside. So that was awesome in Las Vegas.
What was Delta broadcasting? And
again,
who wanted to watch it?
Well, let's put it this way. The Sphere was full.
I don't understand. Was it in-flight entertainment in the Sphere? Like what was?
No, it was all the different technology, consumer-based type technology that Delta was doing. And it was also their 100th anniversary, I believe.
Oh.
So they rented out the Sphere. They had a lot of celebrities showed up, and Lenny Kravitz performed did not show that live, but that was the entertainment after the actual broadcast that we saw happened.
John Adelson was in the audience.
There you go.
Well, look, I don't ask for much in life, but I want the helicopter that fits in the back of the car. That's all I really want. It's this nice little helicopter here. It's very
Make the trip
simple.
to North Miami Beach a lot faster.
Exactly. It's very simple and apparent. Oh wait, is this the one that fits in the car? I don't know. Like it's only $300,000. Come on. That's fantastic. Oh my God. Who else is here? Peter Sargent, who's already. Oh yes, this is the one who's fit. Wait, hold on. See, now it's in the trunk. Now you see it in the trunk there.
It
wonder
fit
if
in the
that would
back of the bed of my pickup, that's for sure. Yeah.
That is an ugly car. that is just awful. Okay, but I digress. Peter Sargent, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Doing great in the middle of 2 weekends worth of live streaming some stuff for the Boy Scouts. So
Very nice.
making good use of Zoom ISO and other various and sundry things.
Very nice. Love it. Mr. Layman, how are you, sir?
How's it going?
Good to see
Doing
you.
well.
Good to
Doing
see
well.
you. You're traveling down to the west coast of Florida, right? Naples area, you said?
I was just up in the Panhandle last week on vacation, and then I'll be in Sarasota in February.
Nice. And I forgive me for pointing this out, but I have a little love affair with Andy here. Like I'm kind of obsessed with him, but now I'm even more because I've just noticed that you have Hebrew tattooed on your right arm.
I do.
El Roi. Ah, oh my God, I'm obsessed. Okay, moving on. Tony Mobley, my other brother from another mother. How you doing, sir?
I am great.
You look great.
Last year, I was in the hospital.
Yeah.
I was in the hospital from January 2nd to January 18th. Went to rehab on the 18th of January and stayed there until the 18th. Until the 8th of February. They told my wife that I needed to go to a nursing home because she was not going to be able to take care of me. And the other facilities that they had recommended me to go to denied me. So the only alternative was for me to go to a nursing home, be pushed up in a corner, or come home. My wife decided that she would let me come home. The doctor told me, you'll get comfortable in a wheelchair. You'll be in that wheelchair from now on. And David, I want to tell you, I had some therapists. They followed through with what the doctor said. They ordered a power wheelchair. You know, this is your life now. This is your life. There was a problem with the provider that was coming to my house to take care of me. And I had to get a new provider. So guess what? New physical therapist, new occupational therapist, new nurse, new doctor. And as of the end of August and the beginning of September, I got out of the hospital bed and I started moving around. So in September, not only did I get out of the hospital bed, I started moving around. And now I am walking wherever I want to go. I'm driving the car. And the doctor said, get comfortable in the wheelchair. But I am moving around, doing everything I need to do. And I would be driving today, but we have snow on the ground. So in Atlanta. And so believe it or not, there's snow on the ground in Atlanta and everything is pretty much shut down. So
I
The
know
hell
this,
has not frozen over. Tony's walking. I've seen it.
I know this isn't a religious program, but God is great. So there you go.
God is
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Good to have you here. Ray Harwood, our master of Zoom life. So can you please explain what is this? Because this seemed to me to be the big thing from this 1.10, what is it, 10.3.5 or something update, whatever this update was?
6.3.5.
Sorry, 6.3.5.
And I'm particularly still befuddled by this, David, to be honest. And I occasionally kind of rat on the Zoom folks. And I got to say, when I saw this, the only place it was in the Zoom workplace release notes. It never has appeared to my knowledge, and I'm pretty close to the Zoom events release notes. It has not appeared in there. And the issue that I have now that 6.3.5 is live and it's been announced that this capability is built into the Workplace app is when I go in, and I've got 4 different Zoom events licenses. When I go in to schedule a webinar, there's no place for me to say, this is Simulive, but I want it to do the new behavior and go to live. So I think the documentation's incomplete. I think the implementation is still incomplete, but you're right. This has been a big ask from a lot of people. Some people want to be able to have a pre-show live and then show a video and a post-show live. And Zoom's answer to that is use the video player in the share screen. And I agree with that. But if you wanted to have an hour movie and a discussion afterwards or something like that, a couple of my clients have done this sort of thing, and you just wanted to have something up front, pre-record that, put that on the beginning of your Simulive piece, and then at the tail end have it just quietly go away and bring you on stage and allow you to talk to your audience. And that's what I think is coming up.
Oh, Frank found it. So
It's
if
just a screenshot. It's not not from a working site.
Oh, it's not. I'm sorry. Okay, so where is this from? Notes or something?
It's
I looked for that. I couldn't find it on my app. Yeah.
Yeah, it may not. They may not have pushed it fully out yet.
So this is what it should look like. And forgive the blurriness. It's just a small screenshot. So Simulive automatically start and play a recording in the webinar, excuse me, and then a checkbox for transition to live afterwards. To transition Simulive webinar to live, the host must update the client to specific version or later. It doesn't even have the version number in here. That's kind of funny.
Well,
okay.
the other thing that the note says is that all of the attendee clients, if they're going to participate, have to have 6.3.5 Workplace updated. So Denise Lahat and I have already had this conversation of, well, in the next couple of months, what if some people are still working on 6.3.0 and you have a Simulive and you want to go to live? What we think now, we haven't been able to test it yet, but what we think is they'll be dropped off.
That's not normally how Zoom does it. Usually you get a screen prompt saying you must update to join this session.
Why? I don't understand. Why would the viewer's client app update have anything to do with whether you can switch the webinar from?
I don't think that's what he's saying, David. He's saying that the participants who want to join the webinar will have to meet the requirement or they won't be able to join the webinar.
No, but what I'm asking is why? Why does their not being on 6.3.5 have any impact on?
That's true of Zoom meetings. That's how Zoom works for most things. If you enable a new feature and the client doesn't meet the requirements, you'll get a screen prompt saying you must update to join the session. That's always been true for years.
Right. No, that I understand.
Well, it's the same logic.
Right. My thinking was that those features that require an update have something to do with the recipients, the viewers' app, or how they're going to interact with the meeting. In a webinar, they're literally just watching. There's no interaction. I don't even know what is required. What would be required on their end to make this possible? It doesn't seem like
some hook somewhere. I'm guessing that when you do a Simulive, that's a separate thing that goes and joins a play out from Zoom, and something has to transition the user from that to a live webinar. That there's something different about it. I think
so it's not just like a video playing in the webinar. You think that they're moving from one thing to another, perhaps.
I think so, because with a video playing from a webinar, it's still me as a host playing out the video into the stream, and this is something coming from the Zoom cloud.
Interesting.
Site. The last sentence in the release notes for this SimuLive webinars with automatic transition to live says users must be on Zoom Workplace app version 6.3.5 or later to use this feature. So I agree with what you guys have said, is that normally Zoom doesn't even let you go into one without upgrading. And is the package smart enough to go, oh, this is a SimuLive to live webinar. You can't join until you've upgraded to 6.3.5.
And by the way, this whole, I don't think we thought of this when our meeting here started, but this is countdown. This is a countdown clock. That's what this is. That's what this is. It says here, this feature ensures webinars start on time with engaging content while enabling live interaction with the audience. That's what a countdown timer is meant to be. So what Zoom has just given us is the ability to have pre-roll for 2 minutes or 10 minutes or however many minutes while we don't have to pay attention to it, and we can be prepping ourselves and then switch over to live.
But you can't join the meeting until that starts.
Right. Right. In the same way
if you just want 2 minutes, create yourself a 2-minute pre-roll timer, have it start at 2 minutes before the hour, and then when that timer expires, you're live.
No, but what I'm saying is your video, your pre-recorded video, just that's your countdown.
Well, yeah, if you want it to have, let's say you're going to have a really large webinar with a really large number of people and you're going to need 10 minutes, you would record 10 minutes of pre-roll, schedule it to start 10 minutes early. It would let people in, and you would put in an entertaining video that says, we're going to start in 10 minutes while people are coming, blah, blah, blah. And then if it played for 30 minutes while, your special guest gave their presentation, and then at the end of that 30 minutes, if you were backstage, someone would have to come on stage in order to join. That whole interaction with Zoom is from my perspective, yet to be explored, and I can't wait to kind of get in and start it and make a video or two of how it actually works.
We've seen now a couple times Zoom announce or release things that I wouldn't say they're not fully baked. I would just say that Zoom hasn't fully rolled them out. Maybe it was just a little premature,
We've seen a number of notes that say, this feature is dependent on a back-end update scheduled for, 2 or 3 weeks later.
No, that we've seen a lot, but I'm talking about something
this
like
has nothing. Right,
exactly. Right. I'm talking about, we've seen a few times when, I'm not bashing Zoom, I'm just saying when they've said something's live and it hasn't really been live yet. And by the way, speaking of being alive and being present and being glorious, I didn't introduce Frank.
Oh,
I didn't say hello to Frank.
What an intro.
Apologize.
Thank you. Hello. Just to jump on the Zoom release process, when Zoom says something's live, it might be live in one region or in one product license and not live for everybody everywhere at the same time. They usually do some sort of cascading release across either geographic time zones or product licenses. So it might be live for some segment, but not for the vast majority of people.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And in fact, excuse me, that also came up, and then Mike will grab out Robert's question, but I just want to mention that, remember how, I think it was a week or two ago, some people had said that they were getting the 1080p with the Sessions non-subscription license. Remember, they now said that you can get 1080p if you have a Sessions or an Events license. And the question was, does it have to be a subscription or not? And we were told it has to be a subscription. And then a number of people here said, but I got 1080p and I don't have a subscription. I just have the PPA. It's going to go away. You're going to lose that. And that's because of what Frank just said, is that it was updating in different regions and different areas, and it just hadn't made its way around yet. So if you are on a PPA Events or Sessions license and you got that sweet 1080p, hold on to it for dear life, because it won't be there forever, according to Zoom. But yes, looking at a release note like this and sort of having that, where is it feeling. It's such an Amazon, next day shipping kind of, like, we're so impatient with some of this.
Where do we
stuff.
subscribe to Zoom Prime so that we get all the deliveries 2 days later?
Right. Right. Zoom Prime. I like it. Go ahead, Mike.
All right. So we have a question from YouTube. And of course, do put additional questions in YouTube chat, and I will relay it to the crew as I just did about Robert. And here it is. When using the streaming app, like here on Zoom Test Kitchen, when you reach your license limit, will the message "watch the live stream with a link" be shown to all attendees trying to join?
I wonder if that's true even without the app. If you are in a webinar and you stream it through Zoom, you're not using some third-party cockamamie system. You're streaming it through Zoom. Does Zoom have there's a checkbox.
There's a checkbox when you schedule a meeting or a webinar and you enable the live streaming portion. Would you like us to let people know when your meeting is full that they can go watch it on the live stream?
That's great.
Now, I've
Yeah.
never had a capacity crowd yet to actually test that, but
And again, it's not very specific to, is it YouTube, Facebook, etc. It is YouTube. It is live stream, right?
Yeah,
So
I
it-
I think there's code in there that says if we're live streaming and meeting is full, throw this up.
I stopped sending stuff to Facebook a long time ago. I just stopped. I can't keep up with the.
It's still a mess right now.
Is
so,
it still?
yes. Yeah.
I felt like they kept changing the rules on what I had to do, and I don't know. I was always one of those folks that said, throw it up everywhere, cast the widest net, and now I just YouTube. That's it. That's it. If you want to find it, that's where it is.
Yeah, the right now the APIs are still broken with a lot of products, and they're trying to rectify that, being vMix specifically that I know of. But basically, as I mentioned last week, the custom RTMP is your friend. When in doubt, use that. And if you still do have a Facebook audience that you want to stream to.
So Robert is saying that checkbox, Ray, only applies when you're using YouTube or Facebook, not when you're using a custom RTMP. I think that's what he's referring to.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And like I said, if I could ever get 500 of my closest friends to come to a webinar, 501 of my closest friends to come to a webinar, I could ask that last person, hey, what happened when you got there?
We need like a Zoom events license for 5, so that
Well,
we can
and
test
I
what
was
happens
just having
when
that thought. What you can't do is say, I want to have a webinar, but I want to limit the number of attendees to 5. You can't do that. So
Right.
Interesting, right? It always is going to go up to your. But wait a second, shouldn't you be able to do that with a PPA license? Because with a PPA license, you only have it.
That's registrations. That's not the number
Oh,
of
okay.
registrations and potentially attendees. Once you get to, let's say you have a great event and you've got 1,800 people online, and you have a meeting. Heaven forbid, you've got a meeting, and more than 1,000 people were to show up. But if they were to show up, it would have to say, because you can't have a meeting more than 1,000 people. Sorry, we can't do any more of this, but it's live streaming. Go over here.
Right. And Robert is saying that he's specifically referring to the streaming app. I don't know, Robert. Without being mean to the developer, I would not use the streaming app in production. It's just not.
Yeah,
It's just
officially there should be no difference.
Yeah.
Because
I'm just not sure if they built in, if all the functionality that's native in Zoom, I don't know if it's all built into the app piece of it.
right. That's a fair comment, David, at this point.
And David, I don't know, and maybe your relationship with talking with the developer does this live streaming app perform live streaming differently, or does it actually use special hooks into the Zoom SDK or whatever to make those extra things go out? So are they actually different, kind of to Robert's question, if you go through the app versus the web?
That's a good question. Yep. I don't know the answer to that.
And by the way, David, whatever method you're using today, we are 1080p on YouTube.
Now that's interesting, right? Because last week we weren't. Huh. That's fascinating. Now, last week we were using the live streaming app, but it worked last week. This week it didn't. I wonder if, I don't know. That's really interesting.
I just thought I would let everybody know
Yeah.
that yes, you
No,
can
that's
watch
good.
us as 1080p this week. Everyone on YouTube.
How do I look at 1080p?
You have to ask Robert. He'll give you the honest opinion.
No, Robert, don't. No, I don't want to hear it, Robert. Hey, we should. There's more stuff that came out. Oh wait, that's my helicopter. I don't want that.
And
So
Robert's
what-
complimenting us on the 1080p. He's very happy.
Oh, good. Thank you. Okay. So let's just, oh, and by the way, speaking of updates, so, I said it's time to update 1.3 or 6.3.5, and then Zoom dropped 6.3.6, which is coming out on Monday.
Right. Yeah, Monday. Correct.
Yeah.
It's not released yet.
And 6.3.6 looks, well, hold on, I haven't scrolled through the whole thing, but, well, let's start with, it looks like mostly it's an AI update. Let's look at 6.3.5. So we've got users. Wait a second. I'm pulling it up for everyone. Sorry. All right. Users can send contact requests with a pre-filled message during Zoom meetings through the profile card. When sending a contact request, the message field automatically includes contextual information about the current meeting. That's kind of cool, including the meeting. Wait, how do we do this? So we're in a meeting. If I go over, okay, so here. All right, so we're in a meeting and I clicked on Mike's name. And now what do? Contact request.
Do you have 6.3.5 installed? Yes.
Yeah. So here's, maybe I shouldn't use Mike because I know Mike on Zoom. I mean, okay, let's try this. Andy, I'm going to try and connect with you. So add contact.
Perfect.
Look at that. This is nice. Wait a second.
Yeah.
Okay. So what it did is, I can't make it any bigger though. That's kind of annoying. You click on someone's icon. You say make connection or we'll get contact. And then it says send contact request with message. Hi, we know each other from Zoom Test Kitchen's personal meeting room on 110. Let's connect and chat on Zoom.
Interesting.
That's actually that's a nice little feature.
Yeah.
Very cute. I want to connect with more people. You can't do it with people you know. Oh, see, I know all of you. This isn't fun. Wait, I'm not friends with Tony yet. Let's do it with Tony. Hi, Tony. We know each other from Zoom Test Kitchen's personal meeting room. That's fun. Okay, I like that. That's good. Let's come back over here. And then we've got the Simulive webinars with automatic transition to live. We've got some mail and calendar features. Redesign email cards, okay, and then a bunch of resolved issues. And by the way, I don't know, Frank, maybe you can tell me if the way this looks right here is new, but I like this. I hadn't seen the
Do you mean the documentation?
Yeah, just the issues table. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't remember seeing it.
I think that's new. Don't get me started on the new documentation though, because I don't like what they've done with the new documentation.
Yeah. Not least of which is the scrolling the table scrolling thing.
I think they're using AI to generate a bunch of it, and
Oh,
they
really?
got rid of a bunch of related links that used to be at the bottom. It's very truncated now. You don't get as many related topics at the bottom of each one.
Interesting.
Anyways, whatever.
Before we go on, I just want to give a shout out to Robert. Thank you, Robert. Thank you for noticing that I have a very shallow depth of field, that I'm looking good. Although then he says popcorn yellow striped smile. I'm not sure if that means that I have yellow teeth and white, like yellow, white, yellow, white. Like if I need to brush my teeth, I'm not sure if that's where you're going with that comment. But he's also asking what did Andy see? So Andy, I'm assuming that in your Zoom.
Yeah, so I got a message request that just came from you, and it just says the same thing that you did, and then it gave me a button to accept the connection.
Which he quickly declined.
No, I didn't.
No kidding.
Come on now.
Basically, the standard team chat contact.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. I do like that. Those little things, adding that context that's a really nice touch though. Now, the only problem now is that I never, ever think to click on a person's icon. I don't know why. I just don't. I never think to click there. It's not obvious to me. So
That is quite popular in Discord, as a matter of fact.
wait a second. What? In Discord, you see, I don't click on people's icons there either. You can click on people's icons. Oh, look at that.
Yes, yes.
I didn't even know that. Hold on, let me see. Zoom. So if someone posts something, here's Andy and I. Oh yeah, look at that. Yeah, I just never do that. Interesting. All right. So then they fixed a bunch of bugs, looks like. Error code, update prompt, yada, yada, yada. Okay. Is there anything in here that I always jump over this because I don't care, but is there anything in here that's interesting that we need to call out? And that's a big no. Okay. So
David, can
then
you move your pip over to the other side?
I just moved it over to this side.
Oh,
I'll say that security enhancements here is very vague, but there is a dedicated site. I have it bookmarked somewhere that tells you what security flaws Zoom has, and some of them sometimes are quite major, like critical security flaws. So not saying what the security enhancements are is kind of they should hyperlink to something that explains that, because it could be minor or it could be critical.
Huh. Okay. All right. Well, let's jump up here then. 6.3.6. Did I miss? I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. I don't think I missed anything. 6.3.5. Oh, wait. I did. Look at that. Clips. Oh, yeah, I did miss some stuff. I'm sorry. No one has a kind of movies. You can decline and move meetings from the meeting tab. This is in mail and calendar features. Okay, and then for clips, ability to report issues for Zoom clips. Okay. Users can report issues related to Zoom clips directly from the report problem list of the Zoom Workplace app. And then for phone, channel naming capabilities for Zoom push to talk. Okay, that's all. We didn't miss anything else there. Wait, what? David has a new logo on his shirt. When he is to the right of the screen, it says Zoom. Does it really? I know it says, oh, but when it's on the other side, I don't know what you're talking about, Robert. Sorry. All right, let's go to 6.3.6. New or enhanced features. Here we go. AI Companion 2.0. It's available for Zoom hosted models only. What is that? What's a Zoom hosted model? Okay, well, this is a problem. If none of us know what a Zoom hosted model is, that's a problem. It even has an acronym, guys. It's a ZMO.
Oh,
AI Companion provides users with a personal assistant that helps them stay up to date on important conversations and synthesize information to make faster, more informed decisions. We have to know what a ZMO is.
If I had to guess, David, and I, hate to guess sometimes, but if I had to guess, if you were using Mesh to do some of the hosting on your software as opposed to Zoom, maybe, I don't know. I'm trying to think, where is it not hosted on Zoom? It's when you have it hosted locally on premise.
You know what? Let's ask. I'm gonna ask Zoom. Hold on. Hey Zoom. Sorry, I'm talking to the what do you call it? To the AI to see if it. Okay. Hey Zoom. What is a ZMO? What was it called? ZMO user? Yeah. A Zoom hosted model. What is a ZMO user? It's not going to know. A ZMO user refers to someone utilizing Zoom model only features within Zoom's quality management system. This includes functionalities like transcript translation and language-based automation conditions, which enhance interaction evaluations and analyses for users who may not speak the original language of a conversation. Okay, that's actually not a terrible answer, but I don't understand it. Let's jump to the external link and see what it tells us. Quality management. This is back from December 24. This is not going to tell us, though, what that is. Did anyone understand that? What it just said? Someone utilizing Zoom model only features? Sorry.
I just searched with Perplexity and I put the link in the chat there. Down in the very bottom, it says availability. ZMO is available for customers hosted outside the US, including regions like Australia, Canada, Europe, particularly useful for organizations with data localization preferences or requirements. So it sounds like not even for us, not even for you Canadians, the US people can't use it in, you've got to be in other places. I don't know what that implication is.
Well, maybe this is, I'm trying to copy this link and it's not copying for some reason.
Oh.
When I go to copy, let me try it now. That's so weird. It's not, I don't know why it's not copying this correctly. I'm sorry. I wonder if this just means that they're bringing this functionality to more places. That's not going to work. I don't know why. Like maybe they are just bringing it outside of the US. Maybe that's what this is about.
It's a security setting offered by Zoom for its AI Companion feature. So it doesn't affect anything but AI Companion.
Meeting summary, smart recordings, meeting questions, chat compose thread.
So I know that as a Canadian, I can ask Zoom to use the data centers they have in Canada. I don't know if it's still true, but as of last year, if I did that, I lost some Zoom functionality because certain processing tasks were only done on the US servers that were hosted in America. So we opted to stay on the American servers for this time being. But if there's ever feature parity where all the data could be held in Canada, we would definitely move to Canadian hosting, Zoom hosting.
This, it does say here though, AI Companion is available with ZMO for customers hosted in the US and to those hosted in select regional locations, which include Europe, Canada, and India. So
What's interesting is I read it a little differently, which says the model, like the large language models that AI is built upon these days, is only can only be hosted by Zoom. So wherever, back to Frank, what you were saying, if they host the models on the Zoom servers in Canada, then you could use it Canada only. But if they only host them in the US or India servers, then you're kind of stuck.
Yeah, Zoom also uses third-party tools for things like AI, but they've
Yeah.
gone to great lengths to say that that data is not kept or retained or used for any other purposes. But I mean, in a perfect world, as a Canadian, I'd want all my data subject to Canadian laws
that's
and regulations.
the infamous transborder Canadian data flow
Right.
law.
Right,
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about that. I mean, you guys are going to be the 51st state pretty soon, so I wouldn't worry too much about that.
Not if I have anything to
Doug-
say about it.
Robert is saying that a ZMO refers to a Zoom-hosted model for AI, not third-party AI models. So an organization can add its data to AI Companion via its ZMO.
Again, Zoom has such interesting language. You know,
Yeah.
if they ever used plain language and made these things more understandable to regular people, that would be nice.
Yeah, I really don't get that. Okay.
It'd be nice if there was a Zoom glossary where you could look things up.
Team chat, our new sidebar. Sorry, I have to scroll in here. Oh, they're getting a lot of team chat's getting a left sidebar tabs. Badging control. Starred chats and folders as tabs. Chat tools in the more section. All tab enhancements sent. You know, I really should care more about chat. I just don't use it. The Zoom chat, but it's, you know, if you use Discord or Slack or any of these other chat tools, that's what Zoom is trying to reach parity with.
Well, team chat too. Teams,
And team chat,
Microsoft
sure.
Teams.
Yep. External. I'm sorry. I'm looking at my chat now. When it says team chat, when it says team chat external, that means people not in my org, right? Yes. Okay.
Not on your account. Yes.
Right. Oh, Tony sent me a contact request. I'm going to accept that. Thanks, Tony. Okay. Let's see what else. Sort and filter, external connections. And I think that's it for the 6.3.6. Oh, some bug issues. They resolved an issue where this is funny, where existent events were displayed in calendar for the Zoom Workplace app. Apparently, maybe Zoom AI was just, if it didn't think you were busy enough, it was randomly making up calendar events for you. That's actually a great bug. That's a great bug. I don't know if anyone saw this, but there was a, this is in The Guardian from about 6 days ago, about how to deal with Zoom calls in 2025, and talking about Zoom fatigue in 2025. We discussed this last night on the rundown also. And one of the things they talked about was the difference between static backgrounds and moving backgrounds. So, you know, the virtual background of the palm trees and the ocean versus just a bookcase or a picture of a bookcase. And they say some interesting things in here. I'll pop the link in the chat for everyone so you can see it. But they talk about that. They talk about how looking at hide self view can be really important to people. Let me pop this in the chat before I keep talking here. Everyone in meeting. So here's the article, and I'll pop it in YouTube land also. That they suggest that you not have show self view turned on which is, I think, is ironic because we've all spent the past 5 years making sure we have a confidence monitor, making sure that we focus on, how are we showing up in these meetings, things like that. But this talks about how that is just very wearing. It also talks about having shorter meetings, more meetings, but shorter meetings, because having to focus on making eye contact with lots of people all at the same time or for a long extended period of time is really, really challenging. And then it talks a lot about the backgrounds here. It said, in one insight, people tend to feel more connected to others when video calls are frequent, brief, and conducted with small groups rather than long meetings with many participants, possibly because maintaining nonverbal communication cues such as eye contact with many people takes a lot of mental effort. I think that's interesting because I don't think, if you're on a big meeting, I don't think you even think about making eye contact. I don't. Keeping online meetings as brief and as small as possible. I firmly believe that every nonprofit should have at least one free Zoom account, and that all of their board meetings and committee meetings should be held on that free account so that it just stops after 40 minutes. Like, I absolutely believe that that's a great idea. All meetings should be no more than 40 minutes. And here, people who spend long periods of video conferencing may start to become more aware of their appearance, right? Ray, who pointed out to me, not Ray Harwood, the other way, Ray, that I do this a lot with my chin, and he called me out on it. And no, it's not, Mike, because I'm wise. It's because I'm very aware of my double chin down here. And so I very often try and hide it by going like this.
It's
So,
useful
yes.
it's useful to have your microphone hide it.
So you're right. It's actually a really good point. So it says here, some become so preoccupied with perceived flaws that they become anxious about attending meetings and may seek cosmetic procedures to alter their appearance. Okay. Zoom dysmorphia, they call it. And then there was something else. So then the piece about video calling increased people's anxiety about being negatively judged by others and increased their interest in self-enhancing products in the aftermath of the call. You know what I'm going to do when we're done here? I'm just putting it out there. I'm going to go get some moisturizer. That's what I'm going to do. Such as facial creams, it says. What else? Switching to speaker view rather than gallery view and turning self view off also helped, as did asking participants to write a paragraph about their good qualities and characteristics after the call to boost their self-esteem. Okay, fine. Zoom background. So this is it. Those seeking a static virtual background experienced the least fatigue, especially if it was a nature-based image, because that may be calming. But get this, this is interesting. Although the study didn't assess the impact of people using their real background, Zhang, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, forgive me if I'm not, who uses a tree and mountain-based backdrop for his own video calls, suspects a static image may still be better. He says, if you have your own office, it's okay because people aren't walking behind you. But if you're in a coffee shop or you're working outside, again, it's that movement, that distraction, I guess, of things moving around that is really problematic. So either be in an office or alone where no one's moving behind you, or do what Frank does. Every time someone does walk behind him, turn your camera off. He's got an itchy trigger finger there, turns that camera off and turns it back on, or use a static image, they say.
My wife doesn't like being on camera, so I turn it off when she walks behind me.
No, that's perfect. Yeah. And yes, Mike, ZTK is brought to you by Botox. No, Ozempic. Ozempic. Oh my Lord. So I don't know. Is this, do you all feel like this is still a thing? The Zoom fatigue?
Well, I think it's definitely a thing with some people, and it's like my wife hates it when I like draw the bell curve in the air. There's some of us who have done this for so often, and we get so much personal satisfaction with the interactions that we have and so forth that, doesn't bother me, and I wouldn't think it bothers you guys, because you're here every Friday afternoon. But for people who go, oh gosh, not another Zoom meeting. Many times in life, it's all about your attitude. And if that's your attitude, oh, not another Zoom meeting, then you worry about your appearance, and you worry about, how are you going to come across, and you worry about the time sink and all that kind of stuff. And if you don't worry about it, it's not an issue.
Yeah.
I think
So-
it all comes down to, guys, I think it comes down to the fact that if people don't like going to these Zoom meetings, are they worthwhile, these Zoom meetings, right? There's a definition of, are you having the meeting because you're having a meeting? Or are you having a meeting because I'm actually going to benefit from that meeting? Right?
Absolutely.
That's a
and
big
you know what?
difference. It's all about the content.
And you know what, Mike? This is another great example of us blaming the tech for what is the Zoom fatigue in many cases. I don't doubt this all the science. I think everything that's in the article is correct. I think it's also correct that a lot of Zoom fatigue is from stupid, dumb meetings. You're right. Poorly run meetings having nothing to do with the tech.
Well,
John,
in fact, sorry.
no, I just wanted to point out, this is really important. John takes his pants off during meetings. And I'm just so grateful that you shared that with us, John. And now we've shared it with the entire world.
And now I won't stand up.
Sorry, Ray, go ahead.
Well, again, it's back to me towards the attitudinal thing. But before Zoom, I knew some people that they would grumble about every meeting. Why are we having this meeting? This meeting is stupid. I would rather be at my desk where people leave me alone and don't bother me. That sort of thing. You're just, why? And then, I go to a meeting, and if the meeting wasn't really good, I'm asking people, what can we do to improve this meeting or to make it shorter or very concise or whatever? I took over an audio meeting from a project manager that I was working with back in 2008. And she used to have this meeting on this particular project, once a week on Tuesdays at 11 a.m. and it would last for 45 minutes. And when I got a hold of it, we were done in 15. Most people were let go at 10. I need the following people to stay because I need an update from you. And we were done in 15. And I had higher attendance at that meeting because people knew they could come in, get the information they need, and get out and get back to their business. So it depends on, are you looking to just complain about every meeting, or are you actually looking to improve the meetings that you do have to be involved in?
Well, I think you're right on, Ray. One of the things I learned a long time ago this is not, I hate to say it, this is not a meeting like we're talking about.
Yeah.
Meetings that, like what you're talking about, Ray, and what I used to run for a living, I had a published agenda. I followed a set path. Here's what I need to cover. We're done after that. If it was 50 minutes, was 50. In development, I used to work in a development laboratory, software development laboratory. Stand-ups were a way of life. Every morning at 15 minutes, we covered all the things we needed to cover, and then we were done for the day.
But they were called stand-ups for a reason.
That's right.
Right. You stand up because people don't want to stand for more than 15 minutes. Excuse me.
That's exactly right.
Right. Hey, real
Except for
quick,
the guy that was in a wheelchair.
Tony, did you have your hand up before and I ignored you? I apologize if I did.
No, you didn't ignore me. I put my hand down because part of what I was going to say has already been mentioned, and I was just going to say that we are not the norm. And
right.
One of the things that I'm wrestling with right now is that a lot of the worshipers are coming in on phones, and we are trying to accommodate them as far as coming in on the phone in terms of making sure everything is large enough and that kind of thing. But I would say that, and this is a generalization, that the majority of people who are not us or this group or office hours are not interested in being in a Zoom meeting. And so they are not going to invest in getting anything more than a phone. Their phone is good. This is the thing, good enough. The good enough mindset. The good enough mindset is such that in their minds it's good enough, but it's actually not good enough because they're complaining about it. They don't want to be there. But one of the things that is amazing to me, and it's because of office hours and Zoom Test Kitchen and all of the investment that all of us make, I have no time limit in terms of being in a meeting like this or, interacting. You have the biological things that you got to deal with, but in terms of interaction, I have made legitimate friends that I have never met. And my relationship with those people is as good as people that I've, grown up with. And so that's part of what we have to take in context in terms of this article, because I think that they are speaking to the common man, and they're not speaking to us or people like us. And so
sure.
I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Frank and John, thank you.
So, not all research is as valid as all other research. And just because it's in a newspaper or some other mass media doesn't mean that those agendas aren't being set by big corporations. There's a very concerted effort to get rid of work from home by a lot of corporations for lots of financial reasons. I'm dubious of many articles that keep reminding us of how horrible Zoom fatigue is and other things. Really feels like an onslaught of propaganda to get us back to the office for all the reasons that those moneyed classes want us back in the office. So I'm not saying that this person's research is bogus. I don't know anything about this person, but just because it's in a newspaper doesn't sway me one way or the other anymore.
That's really interesting. I hadn't thought about that piece of this puzzle. You're absolutely right. John, go ahead.
I was going to check if the company concerned has forced everybody to return back to the office. I think it may be one of those organisations where that's happened, but I will need to verify that. One of the things that I've noticed, though, in the last couple of months is since I've been pushing these great new features of AI Companion and catching up on what's happened in the meeting and translations and Zoom, thank you very much for turning that on. Zoom, I hope you're listening, because this is for you guys. We need a buffer time after a meeting finishes, because I have too many hosts who close the meeting when I haven't got all the transcription answers, I haven't saved the chat, I haven't got all my notes out of the meeting before the meeting's closed, and a whole lot are lost. And if you go to AI Companion, which is your assistant, that doesn't have access to all the information once the meeting's closed. Although interestingly, if I want to find out what's happened, I can ask AI Companion to catch me up, but I can't look at the transcript of what happened before I turned up to a meeting. And yet, if I do catch me up, AI Companion does a search and gives me answers out of that meeting. So I think some of these tools need a little bit of jiggering around after the real world. But my biggest peeve is this end of meeting panic. When the speaker, thanks for your support, Frank. Thanks for your nods there. It's almost a race when somebody is starting to do their final closing sentences. For me, running around, getting into the chat and going up to the folder and save the chat so I've got the latest version of the chat. And if I've asked anything of the AI during the meeting, I need to get that information out because I'll lose it. If they've shared a Google Doc and I don't have a link to it after the meeting, then I need to get that data out of the Google Doc so that I can use it afterwards. when a meeting closes, we need a buffer to be able to take all the data that was generated in the meeting, to sort it all out and make use of it after the meeting. And it shouldn't be up to the host to just kick us all out and then we have no access.
I don't understand. It would be trivial for Zoom to have a setting in your personal profile that said, in meetings, I want these things saved automatically, and you shouldn't have to, like, you can turn it off or on, but if you're a person who wants these things, why can't you just go into your settings, enable that, and it automatically happens for every meeting? Is it
Well,
because,
but maybe the host doesn't want you.
but if you already have the ability while the meeting's on to save it, and you
Right.
just happen not to get there in time, it's stupid that you can't have that auto done for you.
Doesn't Zoom transcriptions and all that, can't you get email those, the host at least? Can't they get an email with all that information? I mean, I get the email from AI Companion. Couldn't you have it set up such, John, that no matter when you leave the meeting, that you get an email
If you're the
after the fact
host.
with all that stuff?
If you're the host, David.
No, but
You've
I'm
got to
saying
be the
why,
host.
I mean, presumably they could make that available to others also.
I don't see why not.
Yeah.
Again, if you enable the ability to save the chat as a host, then anybody in the meeting can save the chat whenever they like. But what they can't do is get the last version of the chat saved if the meeting's closed before they get a chance to hit the button. So,
Or
yeah.
if they hit the button before the end of the meeting. I mean, either one, right? It's like when you join AI Companion will only give you the information from when you turn on AI Companion. It doesn't go back. Ray, do
Yeah.
you want to jump in?
I've suggested, sorry, the other Ray. I had my hand up first.
Do it, Frank.
We talked before, when we first got started, we got talking about the pre-show, and I've encouraged clients to keep the meeting open, turn off all mics, all access, everything else for 10 minutes with just a logo and a note that says, if you want to capture information, do it now. And it doesn't cost anybody anything. It turns off by itself. And it's a simple solution I've encouraged people to do.
So it's not a countdown, it's a count out. Right. Interesting. Go ahead, Ray.
The other technical piece to that is that there are multiple chats involved. There is the meeting chat that is saved with the meeting recording that I believe Zoom could very easily give everyone access. To me, it's what the continuous meeting chat place should be for. Is there ought to be a link in there, or they put the summary in there. Why don't they put a link to the chat or something like that? It's that interpersonal chat that you have with other people that includes your private messages back and forth. That there's a checkbox to save those, and it saves it on your computer basically when you're done. If you don't have that saved then and you want to get it later, I mean, it's really gone. Zoom doesn't keep that part.
I sometimes wonder if it's because if Zoom did this, it would cost them money, because that would be a lot. If, let's say, a significant portion of Zoom users turn that feature on, that would be a lot of extra downloads per cycle. It's sort of similar to why I don't understand why closed captions aren't always available to people without asking the host to enable them. Because if I have a disability, I shouldn't have to, first of all, ask. I shouldn't have to reveal that I have a disability. I shouldn't have to beg the host to turn something on that I need. When I watch a TV show, I press the closed caption button. The provider of the show doesn't decide if I'm entitled to see those closed captions. They're immediately available to me if I decide I want them. And I think that would cost Zoom a lot of money too, because then it would have to generate captions for everything all the time.
It goes back to my statement a couple of weeks ago. I'm already paying $100 a month for a terabyte, and the reason, my Apple account charges $5 a month for a terabyte, and most of the other things are way cheaper. But I hear you're getting so many more services and everything for that. I'm not getting 20 times the amount of service out of it, and those sorts of things. I think you're right, Frank. I'd be happy for Zoom to do it and maybe continue to pay $100 a month. But I'm doing whatever I can now to have a workflow that gets all of my recordings out except the things that I absolutely have to keep on board. And the whole Zoom events and Zoom sessions video on demand feature is really going to mandate really that I move everything over to Vimeo and just take it off of Zoom for post-event viewing.
Real quick, Ray, before you go, I just want to clarify, Frank, the closed caption thing, because that's kind of
Sure.
stunning. So I went in to captions. I wonder, can I bring this down? Yeah, I can. So I went into captions and I saw host caption control settings, and it says allow closed captions for this meeting.
Yeah,
Now-
I'm suggesting you shouldn't have that ability, or
to turn that off.
or there should be some very strenuous reason, like ultra security mode or something. But I mean,
right.
as a person, not that I am, but as a person who has a disability, they should have the dignity of not having to ask, not having to self-identify. The same way television has worked for the last 50 years in most of the world, the captions are always there.
Yeah.
The provider of the show doesn't decide if you're entitled to captions. I don't think the host should decide if you get captions. I think the captions should always be available, and you shouldn't have to beg people for captions.
Do you think this is a financial
I have
thing,
no
or
way
do
of
you-
knowing. I
is-
have no way of knowing that, so it's just supposition. But I do think that if Zoom turned captions on for everybody all the time, that would put a lot of extra load on servers and
Oh.
eventually cost them money. Whether or not that's their reasoning, I don't know. But as a company that keeps espousing accessibility as a core feature of their product and their corporate philosophy, why are you making people with disabilities jump through hoops to get the things they need to be
Yeah.
treated with equal fairness,
Yeah.
May have been a cost issue when they first brought it out, but it's probably not such a cost issue now, is it? I mean, I've seen announced that the free VLC player is going to have automated captions, and it's going to run it on itself, and it's not even going to use the cloud for it. So the cost of captioning and that technology has dropped dramatically. It may have been an excuse or a reason, whichever side of the fence you're on, for captions not to be everywhere when it first came out. But I think the argument is now much more on Frank's side, that it should be a fundamental right of
I think it's an example too of what Ray was saying. Just like they nickel and dime you on things that really, like, why can't I have a setting that collects all of the meeting transcripts if the host has said they're available to down? Just because I click a second too late, now I can't have them. Like, why can't I just have the software automate that process for me so I don't have to freak out and worry if the host ends the meeting quickly and I didn't get them?
Right.
Yeah, my comment about that is actually, excuse me, is to actually have it, how we see that the meeting is ended? We have that little pop-up at the end, is to actually have them build in the buttons in there that have been enabled by the host to be able to then go, click here if you want from the chat, click here for if you were allowed to have the recording of the video, click here, and then it now gives you a browser pop up or insert whatever here that would say, where do you want to save it?
Yeah.
Sure.
Or
Or
it automatically
let me
defaults to
let me
your
put it in
Zoom.
my personal profile settings and say anytime I'm in a meeting, if the host allows the the chat to be downloaded, automatically download it so I don't have to think about it.
Yeah, but I would also point out, I mean, I agree with John. I think the cost of doing the closed captioning has dropped dramatically, right? And for those of you, remember, go back far enough with Zoom, it used to check when you wanted to have a virtual background, it used to check what you were running on, because the client may not have been able to process the virtual background for you. I mean, I can't think of a chipset today that is shipping that wouldn't be able to do closed captioning rationally.
I don't know for sure, but many large vendors, the closed captions or the transcription is the basis for the AI to have something to analyze. So it's happening whether it's exposed or not. So it's happening regardless. Why are you hiding it from people who actually have like the most need for it?
Well, I'm not talking about, you're talking about exposed from the back end. I'm talking about the local client could be doing it.
Yeah. But I agree with you. Costs has come way down, and I think it's an affront to people with disabilities that they have to ask the host. It should
Right.
be their God-given right to have those captions available all the time.
And I'll add one more to that, which is basically the scenario that considering how quickly closed captioning is activated once you do click on it, coming from a system end, guaranteed it's probably already semi there.
Well, Mike,
Maybe
it
more
is
delayed.
working. It is working all the time, because if you do a catch me up and you look at the little 1s and 2s and 3s and the catch me up, it goes back to the transcript text.
Right. It's all right. Like Frank said, it's all based on the transcript.
Yeah.
But I just want to point out that Ray Harwood, you put a link in the chat to Streamalive, which, by the way, has done a lot of work since I've visited this last. I don't visit it very often, but they have this link library, which actually is a really, really nice. Thank you, Mike. It's a really, really nice tool. It will read the chat and look for.
I like to say harvests URLs from the
Thank you.
chat.
Yeah. I'm not gonna do it now, but you get the idea. Which it's a really nice feature. But then again, that requires everyone to do it on their own. And what we're trying to figure out here is how can we make it a little more seamless. I love Mike's idea of having at the end of every meeting have, if the host allows it, do you want a link to the recording? Do you want the links from this meeting? Do you want the chat or transcript? Whatever those 3 buttons are. I think that's a great idea. In fact, I love it. It reminds me a little bit about in events, you can have like a resources page or something.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to have something like that available for us. Go ahead, Ray.
I'm wondering whether there's an opportunity here for someone in the marketplace. With the marketplace, you can create code that does a lot of things. And is there a way to create an app, a marketplace app, that would join the meeting and do some of the things that Streamalive does? And that is just look at the chat as it comes in and go, oh, look, there's a URL, and take that and just paste it later in a group over in the continuous meeting chat, or actually even better, sort of on real-time basis over in the continuous meeting chat. And anyone could make use of it there. To me, that's better, because if you could get all of the links to any docs that you used and any worksheets that you used and any URLs, any of the things that you checkbox, say, I just want these put into this continuous meeting chat, then anyone who has access to that, we would start to go, I'm going to give all of you access to this so you have access to it. It's a great resource. Anybody could go in and get it anytime, as long as there's no secrets involved.
I'm looking in the App Store to see if there is.
The answer is you could do that.
You could. I'm looking in the App Store to see if there is any. If there is an app.
Than it would for Zoom to just give it as a feature at the end of the meeting.
It should be core functionality. It shouldn't have to have a third party.
Scanning for the stuff to do it. That's why it would be resource intensive. It would constantly have to, every 5 seconds or something, poll everything, grab everything, so that whenever the meeting closes,
you can have the API set up a webhook to get every in-meeting chat. So I mean, that's already being done.
I just think it would be very easy for Zoom to do it.
I was just looking into that the other day, though, and I wasn't able to successfully get every chat that happened when I was looking at it for the webhook.
I have too many trust issues with third parties. My contract is with Zoom. And why doesn't Zoom just provide it natively?
And when I say, someone could do it, Zoom has a number of apps in there. They could certainly go, oh, look, we don't want to burden this code on every instance of Zoom that's out there because it's going to cause too much stuff. But if people that wanted it could at least go in and enable it, that would be a good start. And then they could kind of move it in later once the code got popular.
I just wonder if it's financial. Like if they turn this ability on and people turn it on in their local clients or however they set it, and then most of them never revisit the data, but Zoom's got to process the data. There's financial, for Zoom, that's a financial hit.
I'm surprised that there aren't Zoom app. I've been searching the Zoom app store while we've been talking, the marketplace. I'm surprised that there aren't apps that are taking advantage of that, kind of harvesting that data. It seems like a sort of a
There's
no-brainer.
already AI apps that in the marketplace that go into your Zoom meetings and transcribe and record, and people hate them and have pitchforks and torches. More of that from a third party would probably, there'd be people who would want it, but there'd be a lot of people angry about it too. That why is this thing joining my meeting?
Well, right. I mean, when Fathom joins your meeting, or what's the other, Reader or right? I don't know.
Read AI or
so that's actually like a separate, sort of like Stream Alive. It's a separate client joining your meeting. But the apps, they're I don't think anyone knows about them. They're on your side. Right?
Well, I know for some of the ones you just mentioned, a few others, there are people who are very vocal about not wanting those things joining their meetings because they sent a link to someone who's a participant who either knowingly or unknowingly has a subscription to that now, and they can't get those things to stop joining their meetings, and they're completely flabbergasted and angry about it. And now we're talking about introducing another class of tools that basically harvest a whole bunch of information from the meeting itself. Like, I want Zoom to do this themselves. I don't want a third party intervention. Ray's idea that Zoom creates a marketplace app is a good first start, but I mean, it wouldn't be that hard for Zoom to do it if they really, wanted to.
Right. I'm also thinking about, you remember how, and we didn't really dive into this at all, but how clips, no, not clips, sorry. How, what's the other, Zoom Cuts. How, is that right? Yeah, that's the other app. How Zoom Cuts is now not its own client. It's an app on your desktop that connects to the client or something like that. I don't know. I wonder if
you're talking about Zoom Cuts, the Liminal app.
Yeah.
Originally, David, right?
Yeah. I don't even know if I have it on my computer.
Yeah, Zoom Cuts, it now isn't a separate client. So you just essentially sign in with the same account, and it links and it uses the desktop client to do its thing. So I think it's some new I don't want to say SDK, because it's not really SDK, but it's some new connection that you can use to get into the client.
Yeah. Go ahead, John.
While we're talking about new things, something which you can't use yet, but the developers have now been given a tool which allows you to screen share a web page, so that if I was trying to help Mike maybe with a purchase on my website, we could share the web page, and I could then show him what he needs to put his information in. But they are supposed to be editing it so that the web page will be able to obfuscate his credit card number fields and the other data that you wouldn't want the support person to read.
I don't understand how is this different than screen sharing a website before?
Because we are going to be sharing the web page, so I would be able to interact with the web page as the same as him. So I would be able to help him fill the page in, but I would not have access to what you would designate as secure information.
And where is this? How do we get access to this?
We don't get access to this because this is a Zoom developer. This is a new Zoom developer tool.
Oh, sorry. So the developers can build it in. Okay.
They can build it into apps. So it probably more than contact center side, but that means that people are running big contact centers. They've got complicated web pages and content which they're working with their customers. Their contact center staff will be able to have an app to share those web pages, to work with the customer to make sure it works. And I expect Ray's thinking, oh, I hope they run it in Zoom Events so I can show people how Zoom Events works properly. And then they can fill the data in, but they're adding the security feature to obfuscate things which you don't want to be seen by the contact center operator, like maybe when you're putting your credit card details, or maybe there's other personal information fields that you want to fill in that you don't want the contact center operator to see, but they will be able to see the rest of the web page and help the user with their particular problem or their issue.
Gotcha. Go ahead, Ray.
I'm particularly excited about that, John, and thanks for bringing that up, because this is one of the issues that StreamAlive has been having to get an app that does not require joining the meeting. The API is there to grab the the chat and to get that sort of information. I think one of the things they've struggled with is being able to actually share, for the host to go, now I want to see the map of who's joined from everywhere, and have StreamAlive just put that up at a screen share separately from the app rather than from a participant that's in your meeting. So it might be in response to some inquiries that I know that Lux and those guys at StreamAlive have been putting over to Zoom. Look, we want to be able to make this available to authenticated meetings. And I know we tried this back right after we had our Zoom bombing issues, and we went to authenticated and we went, oh, let's look at StreamAlive. We couldn't get it to run. And I've been talking to the guys at StreamAlive about, let's get there. The clock is ticking. Someone's going to figure out how to do this. You guys better be first because you want that space.
Well, Zoom Docs actually uses the same technology, because Zoom Docs is a web page which you all share. So this is technology they've already made use of, because the whole of Zoom Docs is running on it, and now of course they've realized that there's another use for it, and they're going to use it again. So this is not something that's going to take forever. It's almost I think it's in the developers area to use now already, because it's not new technology. The technology to do all this was used to build Zoom Docs, and therefore this is another use case for it.
Nice. David.
Okay, as David stepped away, I'll take over here quickly and remind our viewers on YouTube that if you do have any questions or comments that you would like to ask us, definitely let us know in chat and we will relay to everybody here.
Just to go back then, while there's a silence, about the transcripts, translations, recordings, etc. I'm part of the Zoom developers group now as well, so I'm developing software for Zoom, and I come across a lot of people, organizations, I don't know how big they are, because obviously it's just a developer that appears on the forum, but there is a lot of people looking around the issues of taking recordings and processing them, taking transcripts, putting them into AI. There's lots and lots of stuff happening around that world. I would be skeptical that it's all going to appear eventually as a product, because some of these things have come along and I've heard people talk about what they're doing, and then I thought, well, actually, the AI built into Zoom can do that now already. So you've missed the boat, guys. Technology has already overtaken you. But there is a lot of thoughts and people working around how to make use of the data after a meeting. And but as I said, I expect I'm encouraging the use of Zoom AI, and it's started to take off, I've noticed.
You've gotten a lot of positive feedback, John, from your meetings?
Yeah. I have I'm going to put this polite to these guys. I have a lot of groups that I belong to who aren't technical people. They are just small businesses, marketing. And they are a little bit behind the curve because they are just using basic ChatGPT to think of ideas, to brainstorm things and whatever of that. And when I suddenly threw in, why are you doing that, guys? You realize you could use Zoom itself. There was a sort of drop the mic moment when they started using that. And I would like to officially announce today, yes, today, I managed to persuade one of my groups who was discussing, we were discussing how to create social media posts. And she said, oh, I'll put it in the chat for you. Oh, I can't put it in the chat. The chat's not big enough. I can't cut and paste it. Do you know what I said? You do know what I said. Answers on a postcard. Have you tried Zoom Docs? And she did. She cut and pasted it into a Zoom doc. And everybody was looking at this Zoom doc, getting very excited. It's only taken me three weeks to get that group to use it. But now suddenly they've discovered this new tool called Zoom Docs, and they can take this document that they're arguing about. They do all this AI chat. They come up with a big answer. They can't cut and paste the chat, but they can put it to Zoom Docs, and then they can share it, and then they can all start editing it. Oh, it was so excited. I was actually worried we were not going to finish the meeting. It was a good job that it had a hard stop. Otherwise, I think they would have probably had me still running it 3 hours later. Because yes, Zoom Docs does work, guys. It is useful. And I'm not going to procrastinate anymore. And I'll put pressure on David to turn up, won't I?
So true.
I'm still waiting for Ray to work out how we can use Zoom Docs in events, because I think that's a bit of a challenge for Zoom. If you're going to run a Zoom meeting or a Zoom webinar and you want to bring something through Zoom Docs to show people something, I think that's a challenge for them. Be interesting to what your website sharing works as well, how that could be used. You know, because when you're running webinars, there's nothing wrong with sharing documents with all the people that are panelists, and as a concept of being able, so having the panelists all then interacting with the document and talking to the webinar audience about some particular product. I think things like that could be very interesting, but I don't think Zoom's totally ready for it yet. But well, we'll see. We'll bit a hint, they may do it.
What I miss?
We were just talking about a new product called Zoom Munch, where the camera uses AI to spot what you've just put in your mouth, and that's a Zoom link so that we can all order one as well.
Hold on. Guess that animal cracker. Hold on. What is it?
I guess we don't have enough children in the house.
AI companion is just analysing it and waiting for your answer.
The answer is it doesn't matter.
Based on the available information, it's not possible to determine
Because it's gone.
By the way, I'm probably changing the subject, but the third party, I'm thinking about this because of cuts. Third party apps are now beginning to build Zoom cuts / Zoom OSC functionality in like Spotlight Self and things like that, which is really nice. We're starting to see that coming out in some of these third-party apps. So people are digging in, these developers are digging in not just to the Zoom SDK, but also to some of these other SDKs. I don't know how they, like when you get the Zoom SDK, do you also get all the Zoom OSC stuff? I'm not sure how that works, but however it works.
It's the meeting SDK. There's a whole load of SDKs. So there's an SDK that allows you to talk. Okay, I'm going to take all the technical words. Let's talk in English speak, shall we, so to speak. So there's an SDK, a software kit, which allows you to talk to the back end of Zoom. So you can book meetings, you can create events, you can do all that sort of stuff. So there's that interaction. There's an SDK, a software development kit, which allows you to talk to the Zoom meeting. So that would allow you to spotlight people. So that's what Zoom OSC does. And as you correctly say, you don't have to use Zoom OSC. You can avoid that and talk directly to Zoom yourself and not use Zoom OSC. And you can do spotlighting and all those sort of controls. You can also use a similar SDK that allows you to run Zoom in your browser, which is almost the same. As we know, there's only very, very few features that are not available now in the browser version, but you can do that in two ways. And this is what's so interesting for the future. So you can either take the Zoom browser version and add your own little extra bits in its software, or you can create your own web page app and then take the components of Zoom and put them in that way. So you can have Zoom as the outside all-encompassing app and then put your code in, or you can have your own web page and you can then introduce Zoom things. So you can have your own app And then when people hit buttons, they can have chats, they can have meetings in your app, and you're using code. So Zoom is the back end to all that processing.
So can I ask you a question?
Sure.
How did Ecamm do it? So there is in Ecamm, I launch a meeting
Yep.
from within a panel now in Ecamm, and then it opens up what looks to me like a Zoom window, a Zoom app, not desktop, not
It's the meeting.
browser-based.
It's the meeting SDK. Essentially, it's the client, but they're embedding the client into Ecamm. But
Okay.
they're using they're programming the hooks, whatever they want. So that when you click the spotlight itself, that is telling the meeting SDK do the spotlight.
Yeah. So you've got the two options. You've got start with the Zoom program, add your own app marketplace apps into it. It runs in Zoom. What Ecamm are doing is build their own app and then add the components of Zoom into that.
And what vMix is doing is that they actually have a third or a separate app outside of vMix that works in conjunction with it. That
Yeah.
does the same thing.
Yeah,
though
That connects.
I think Memo Live also does it, opens up inside the app as well. It
Wait,
works
wait,
with
wait.
Ecamm.
How is vMix different? I'm sorry, I missed that.
For vMix, if you want to use the Zoom integration functionality, it's a separate application that you have to download along with the main vMix software. So it looks for it to be able So for
It's a sort of
vMix,
plugin,
they don't have.
You'd probably call it a plugin. If people
Sure. Well, it has to be installed on Windows as a separate piece of software that Zoom looks for. And basically the scenario is that as Zoom updates itself, it's only updating that, where instead of them actually having to fully update vMix every time, That
Right.
there's a new
If they want to
integration.
keep up with the SD, yeah. Okay.
right?
Gotcha.
So they offloaded that to, okay, Zoom, you can update yourself as much as you want, but if I'm ready to actually update vMix, then I'm updating vMix as a software, but I'll update Zoom as often as I need to keep up with the SDK. And
So you could say it's their own
thing.
OSC, it's their own Zoom OSC for them. And of course, that's important for them because they're on a Windows platform and all the Zoom apps are now only going to be, I mean, they've not said it, but they've just done it. They've all gone Mac side. So if you want to have a Windows application, you can't use the Zoom apps because they're all running on Mac. So you have to have your own version of Zoom OSC or whatever to communicate to Zoom and bring the data back.
They've already said that for the liminal apps. We've
Right, but
totally
they-
dropped Windows.
Yeah, but they would argue that the reason they do that is because there are other apps that fill that void, like Zoom Rooms and things like that. Go ahead, Ray. You
Well, and to answer that question, I think the terminology that Andy used was that it's possible for anybody to do that. I don't think we yet have applications that you could just run in Windows that really does a good job with Zoom OSC. But let me get back to vMix a little bit. I probably don't have as direct a contact maybe as Mike does in the group, but I've done enough of this functional programming to kind of understand what I think they're doing. And that is they've probably taken the Zoom SDK and said, we're not going to integrate it into Zoom. We're going to have it out here and we're going to build a couple of portals into it. And we're going to have vMix talk to those portals. So it introduces one extra layer of communication. If vMix wants to do something, it doesn't just call a Zoom SDK function. It has a communication port that pushes over to Zoom SDK locally. And then Zoom SDK basically does whatever it's told. And you can really trim down that SDK to just be things that do things and not things that display things and make things go ding and all that kind of stuff. So it does simplify a little bit, introduces a minimal bit of delay, and I don't think anybody really notices.
Mike, the way you
Yeah.
described it, and also Ray, what you just said, it makes a really strong argument for doing it that way, because then you're not reliant on. It's sort of the Android problem, right? The Android is on so many different carriers and so many different phone makers that when Android pushes an update, whether or not you get that update has nothing to do with Android. It has everything to do with these third parties that have used Android. And so the same is true. The same is true with, for example, Ecamm. And now they've been updating it regularly, but they could not for a number of months. Zoom, the SDK could have a couple of updates in that meantime, and presumably maybe we'd be missing out. Whereas with vMix, it just works. It's an interesting decision.
And also too with vMix too is that as long as you're at X vMix version, no matter how much Zoom updates, there's still that integration, right?
Right.
So now will it understand possibly some of the newer functionality that it has to be able to, that vMix has to call from the Zoom SDK because there's a new function? Then they have to go back to vMix and add that in the next version of vMix or the next beta.
And John is pointing out that Zoom even broke Zoom ISO and Zoom OSC. There was a chat over in Discord about something in ISO. I think it was an ISO. Maybe I'm wrong though. About how there's a big error message that's being thrown out. And he said, "No, don't worry about it. That's just because there's something new over in Zoom that we haven't told Zoom ISO about." And go ahead, John.
Yeah, exactly. They did an update and they broke their own product. I mean, that's blatantly what happened. They did an update, they broke their own product. It meant everybody that was relying on Zoom OSC and all the event people that were running apps that were relying on Zoom OSC had a few days where it just didn't work. The advantage of having your own program is exactly as been said. You can have your own interface, which means you only need to work out which functions you need, and you only bother about making sure they work from Zoom. Because you've got your own software and it works, as long as Zoom doesn't backwardly break things, and it's never done that, so I hope it won't. The SDK, you can use older versions until they expire. So you've got about 6 months from when the new feature comes along as a developer to bring yourself more up to date with your code, and you haven't got to do it on the day that Zoom releases a new piece of software and you update to their back end all the time. So yeah, it's a much better thing to do. You've got much more control as a software house, and you've got much more time to get things working. If you're relying on Zoom OSC and Zoom themselves, then you're completely in their hands, and from a strategic point of view, that's not a good thing to be. Not that I've got anything against Zoom, but it's just from a technical point of view, you don't really want something that's going to give you a program where there's no beta version of Zoom to play with. You just get a new version and then another new version. And because it's a worldwide thing, everybody updates on the same day. So you need a buffer that you can avoid that D-Day, and you can then just check your code and update it later.
So that's so cute that you think everyone updates on the same day. John, no one updates. No one updates. You and I, Zoom
updates. Zoom updates. It's all servers. So when they change the function keys, their SDK is going to start updating. You as an independent software vendor have got no control in that process.
Right.
So you want to protect yourself that if they do something and they do an update and it doesn't work, or it doesn't work as thought, or there is any technical issues, you don't want to be relying on that. You want to have your code relying on what's there originally. But gotcha. Yeah, I know what you mean. It's not exactly. In fact, you're actually giving a good example of an even bigger problem. That if you have got worldwide software used around the world and the update doesn't happen at the same time, that's even more of a nightmare to support. Yeah. So having this 6 month window is really good.
Yeah, right.
And the other thing I'll just point out about this, which I just throw in, is that I don't know how well you look at, because when we run apps, we never really check the terms and conditions. But have you ever looked when you go to accept an app in Zoom that there's a great big set of information about what it's going to allow you, the Zoom app, to access? That's very, very, very tightly locked down now. And if, as a developer, I want to add a new function, I've got to get you to reapprove that app to take note of that function. Otherwise, the Zoom SDK comes back to me and says, sorry, you haven't got access to that particular feature at the moment. I'm not giving it to you. And my app just will break or not be able to do that particular action.
Right.
Which means additionally, now John would have to build into his app to make sure that if he does get an error message that somebody declined that, to make sure that his app doesn't go blah.
Yeah, apps going blah. So for those of you that are technical and maybe non-technical as well, I've been doing Windows for many, many years. I was a Mac guy back in the late 80s, but I've been doing Windows stuff since, and a bit of programming, not a lot of programming, but I've been using either Visual Basic or Visual C or some of those things. And all of you that have ever had a Windows machine and gone to install something have probably heard about .NET.
Mm-hmm.
There was .NET 1.0 and .NET 2.0 and .NET 3.0, and I don't even know where we are with .NET, 142? I don't, it's not that big, but
.NET, I believe it's 9.0, but I'll double check.
All right. So that .NET package is the thing that, I don't write code that says, take this piece of data and put it out on the disk. I'm not going to write that code. It's been written a million times, and they've got it in .NET and it works. You just call this function that says, write this piece out to disk, or send this TCP/IP message out to this IP address, or color this particular spot of the screen blue. Those sorts of things. That .NET to me is like the Zoom SDK, that they take very careful consideration of, well, let's come out with a new version. Why would we do that? Well, we've got this new functionality and we can't incorporate it into this version because it conflicts with some of the APIs that we have in there. So let's make this new version and we'll have two function calls, one that's the old function call and one that's the brand new function call in the new piece of the app, so that anybody who's developing and doesn't want to go back in and rewrite their code can call either one. And that's sort of the thing I think that the Zoom SDK does, and that 6-month rolling window is actually pretty tight compared to most things like in the Windows world. So you can write a Windows program. You can run a Windows program that was developed 10 years ago, and it might still probably work if it was written properly. You can't really run Zoom things that were based on 2019 code anymore. Enough of Zoom has changed. You have to keep updating. So if you're a small business and you go under and you had the greatest app since sliced bread, 6 months later that app can't work.
And getting back to what David was mentioning before about Facebook, that's the same scenario there too, is that Facebook just updates it when they want to, don't tell any of the developers that they're doing so, flip the code, and all of a sudden everybody can't stream to everybody can't stream to Facebook once that flip happened. And that probably flip happened the night before, Saturday night, maybe early Sunday morning, before everybody's churches are going to be actually broadcasting Sunday morning.
Ray, I'd like to tell you officially you are correct. There are a set of libraries that are available from Zoom, and when they say they will support up to a certain version, you can link to the library that is not today's library but last week's library or the month before that. Or you can make a copy of it on your own into your own program, and you can use that library. And when they have a cutoff date, that means that anybody using the older libraries is actually not going to work.
Yeah, cool, good.
Back to you, David.
That whole conversation just went phew, right above my head.
It wasn't supposed to. Ray brought it down pretty,
Yeah, well,
we could have talked
that's
about,
great. I'm under the table. That's how low it needs to go for me. So, oh my Lord.
It wasn't that low. You didn't lose your yarmulke.
No, didn't fall off. Which I have to say, but I may not be the smartest Zoom guy, but I'm bald and I can keep a yarmulke on my head. So
All right. I got to jump in here, David. I was not here last time Andy was here, and I rewatched that, and Andy gave a lot of great information. And I'm not a big Linux app user anymore. I used to use it a little bit, but all that conversation was really, really good. The one thing that really, really, I don't know, just lit me up was the comment you made, and you included me in this as having really adorable, luscious hair.
Yes.
Me and
Your
Andy,
long hair.
I have the ponytail in the back.
Yes.
It's not all that luscious. It's 70-year-old hair.
I always wanted a ponytail, always, but my hair just curls up. I could never do it.
Oh yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Anyway, that comment really got to me. That was good.
Well, so I saw it for the first time really when you zoomed in from the car, when you had that different angle.
Yeah.
That's when I really saw it. So length, not volume. Thank you, John. Robert says, in defense of Zoom developers, the amount of cross-testing that needs to be done to ensure that the impact on other parts of apps is super difficult. Yeah, you can only test up to 99.99999%. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, earlier we were talking about, and I agree with you, Frank, that some of this stuff, like the ability to grab stuff automatically after a meeting and grab chat, I fully agree that it would be great for Zoom to build that right in natively. And they're really busy with lots of things. And, my wish list isn't necessarily their wish list. So that's why
I think in terms of the Linux users and their percentage of the population, we're much smaller right here than even the Linux users, but we at least have friends in good places.
Absolutely.
Yes, but the developers could take very, very careful note of what Frank said. And if they created an app where that data was sent straight to his servers and wasn't on theirs, then he may be interested. It's all about exactly where the data goes and where's it stored and all those sort of issues, which are things you have to discuss and argue about. But we are talking about Zoom and its API. I would love somebody to correct me. I don't know of any other organization, software company, that can give you chat, screen sharing, webinars, meetings, and then not only gives you the app, but gives you the API, so you can write your own piece of software to use all of those features yourself, and then not have to worry about owning all those servers around the world, because there's a company out there doing it for you. And you can do it in two ways, because I don't know how many people know this, but if you get the video SDK, you can create a complete system which is separate to Zoom, but uses Zoom's back servers in the background, and you just pay them 0.0000 something of a cent for every gigabyte that flies around the network. So you can go completely separate. There are medical, I don't know the details of them because they're probably, obviously secret, but there are medical apps, and there was an employment app, I think, where all the interviews were done within the app. But the app was using Zoom to run the meetings. So thank you, Zoom, for your wonderful API. And more people should be making use of it.
I agree. Absolutely. Friends, I am sending thank you for this information, by the way, Frank. This is really, it's powerful over in the chat. I don't know if you want to share that. I'm going to send this over to Mike and wish you all a wonderful, wonderful weekend.
Yeah.
With gratitude.
Good one.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, David. All right. So we'll continue here, and I'm actually, just give me 1 second and I will actually try to put, yes. As we were talking about, John, there's also limitations in YouTube chat. Go figure. Who knew? I can't put all the information that Frank gave me. I'm going to have to break that up. So I'll break that up here momentarily. But Again, if there's any, let's see if my actual stinger works this week. It did. All right. We're going to do question and answers from everybody on YouTube. And it did work fine. Oh, look at that. Who knew? Thanks, Frank. Appreciate it. All right. So yes, that's been trying to work over the last couple of weeks and looks like I was able to do it. Good. So yes. So if there's any other questions from the YouTube audience, by all means, let us know in chat and I will relay it to everybody here on the team. So let's talk a little bit about Zoom Events, the Zoom Events platform, maybe, Ray, if there's anything new and exciting. And also, one question I did have about that functionality that you noticed with the Simulive sort of before live scenario, is that actually going to go, is that in Zoom Events webinar flavor or is that in regular Zoom webinar flavor? That's my first question.
I believe, and my brain is kind of fried because I took kind of 2 weeks off during Christmas and forgot 30% of what I knew. I believe that Simulive is only available if you have a Zoom Events license. You can do it in regular webinars, on the Zoom.us create a webinar if you have a Zoom Events license.
Right. Okay. So the functionality that we were talking about earlier in the show then is only going to be a Zoom Sessions or Zoom Events functionality then currently. Is your thoughts?
It will work in a regular Zoom meeting if you have a web license, a webinar license, if you also have a Zoom Events license. It doesn't just work in Zoom Events, it works in webinars outside of Zoom Events.
Okay. But again, it's...
Or it doesn't.
Or it doesn't. Go ahead, John.
Or it doesn't. Well, it's technically right and wrong. I mean, I'm not going to say Ray's wrong, but it's technically right and wrong. You have to run it within, I believe you have to run it with Zoom Events, but you can do a one session version of the event, which effectively doesn't have the front end, and therefore it's just a webinar. But I got the hint that they have no intention of bringing that to the normal version of webinar because it's a good reason for people to upgrade to events.
Well,
but as far as the users are concerned, it is just seen as a webinar.
So I had a Zoom Events license and I would turn on Zoom Webinar, just a Zoom webinar. And because I had a Zoom Events license, Backstage was available to me in a regular webinar.
As is Simulive.
I don't know what's going to happen, but historically there's a precedent for it.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, guys. I just read that we have a question from YouTube. Just give me a second. I will bring that in. Okay. Family Cyber Clinic on YouTube. You can let us know in chat who your real name is. He says, I have a question about the Zoom Active Speaking ZAS behavior or performance in Ecamm Live. I don't know if Andy's still with us or not, or anyone.
So if that question would have been asked 20 minutes ago, David was here.
Yeah.
Our resident Ecamm expert.
Okay. And he is actually saying, and Robert, I think might be, yeah, sorry, just catching up on the chat. Would anyone on the panel know if Mimo Live and vMix implementation integration have the same performance issues? I would need to know more to answer from a vMix point of view, your definition of performance issues. He said, oh, sorry.
I would need a little bit more to answer from a Mimo Live perspective as well.
Right. So basically he's saying the issue I'm having is the unnatural switching of the active speaker in the tool. I'm just wondering if this is the same in Mimo Live and vMix. Tony, I'll throw that over to you while I'm thinking about it for vMix side.
I'm pretty sure that with Mimo Live, there is no automatic switching. Primarily, most of the switching we're doing with Mimo Live is that we're using actual iPads to do the actual TDing on Mimo Live. So we have the well, in conversations with Tony Mobley, we're actually using two Mac Minis to run the entire conversation with Tony Mobley, and we have remote TDs who will use a iPad at their location. We have the tunneling so that they can connect to my computers here at my house, and they can do the switching on an iPad. But there is no switching without it being intentional. I don't know if that's answering his question or not.
Yeah, and Robert is actually answering related. He's saying the switching of active speaker and Mimo Live is smooth, except for a drop in resolution of some of the inputs when they are not on the screen or not being recorded. So that was an answer to Family Cyber Clinic. I don't know if that makes sense, Tony, or not, what Robert is saying. But from vMix's point of view, the active speaker, I haven't seen any resolution like what Robert is bringing up about the resolution drop. I haven't seen that myself, nor have I seen any official complaints about that in the vMix forums. But that would be interesting that is happening to you in Ecamm, if that is actually happening to you. From what you're saying, when you're Zoom active speaking. So active speaking. So basically it would be equivalent to like, if I'm understanding it correctly, it's as we go from person to person, is the software actually properly switching? And again, it's going to base it on when Zoom assumes enough through its algorithms that active speaker is the one actually talking and should switch the video to it. So there is a bit of that going on, but if there is additional layers that Ecamm might be adding to that, I can't speak to that. When it comes to vMix, my understanding is that it is as raw as it is as if you're in the client. So that means that there should be no difference in the actual active speaker switching as if you're watching it in a Zoom client itself.
But let me hop in there a little bit, Mike.
Yeah, go ahead, Rick.
So I've asked Perplexity, my favorite AI machine, a couple of things, and it kind of lines up with my thought process, and that is that the active speaker determination, as you sort of said in your last couple of sentences there, Mike, really is done inside the Zoom client. And so the Zoom client doesn't immediately, oh, look, John Drinkwater's about to speak. Let's put him on. No, John has to be speaking first before it can go, wait a minute. Yeah, he's louder than Ray, so we'll put him up as the active speaker. The resolution issue is also interesting because when you're using something like ISO or like vMix or Ecamm, any of those things, when that decision is made, and even just the regular Zoom client, I see it, when the decision is made and I've got somebody featured, highlighted, pinned, or I'm looking at speaker view, and then I've got the little itty bitty strip of the other people. When Zoom makes the determination, oh, look, John is now the active speaker because I've been getting 360p video for John, it switches John's video over to the active window and then sends the signal out to the Great Cloud and to John's machine. Hey, gosh, I really wish I had the 1080p. And eventually I get the 1080p rolling in here. That's my theory of how it all works. And that's the reason there's a momentary switch that looks like, oh, it's crappy video, but oh, look, now it's fine. Perhaps if I was writing software like for vMix, I would sort of send the signal of, I want 1080p from everybody. I'd like to be able to get 1080p from everybody, so that as soon as I do a switch, maybe I would even, maybe if it was a 25 or 50 person meeting, not get 1080p from everybody, but at least the 5 last people to speak, so that only if, Mary Ellen started to speak and she hadn't piped up the entire hour and a half, when I swap her in, she may have a second or two. But yeah, that to me is the best Zoom can do without killing everybody's bandwidth.
Correct. And I can vouch for what you're saying there, Ray. And basically what vMix does is it allows the person that is operating vMix to choose the resolution that they want from this person. And that is based off of the call that vMix is getting from its Zoom client that connected to the system, asking it what the maximum resolution is, and it gives you your different choices. But again, it's more, vMix does it via inputs. So it's very similar to Zoom ISO in the regards that it's better to use Zoom ISO type functionality in vMix so that you are actually doing the mixing then. So if you know that that next person is going to come up next, instead of relying on Zoom's active speaker mode, you can actually have your inputs already set.
Yeah.
As Zoom ISO feeds that are coming into vMix. And then you are now physically, if you don't switch quick enough, now it's on the actual person running the actual Ecamm vMix Mimo Live software, not going to that camera fast enough, or that person, in this case for Zoom integration, quick enough. Then I think Robert is also mentioning too, just keep in mind that there is a resolution limit for the SDK in Zoom ISO. On a standard license, you get a max of 8 times 1080p inputs. And it's Robert is correct. Even in vMix, currently, I believe, and I would have to double check my notes, but I think the amount of full bandwidth that you are allowed to pull down input wise is 30 megabit. And should you ask every input to be maximum, Zoom will start to then, by default, if you maxed out your 30 megabit per second download that you're getting into vMix, you will, and I can't vouch for any of the other software because it's a Zoom vMix relationship that this has been agreed to, that if you say you have 20 inputs at 1080p, it won't be 30 megabit. vMix will then, unfortunately, Zoom will be forcing vMix to then go to lower resolutions at that point. So again, you're best to, like Robert is saying, stick to maxing out around 6 to 8 inputs as ISO inputs, and then you will benefit for that proper, making sure that you're not going over that 30 megabit per second. Go ahead, Ray. Did you have something?
And don't forget the hardware you're running on, because obviously if
Right.
if you start having all these high quality inputs and your hardware is not as powerful as it could be, then you can have issues. But yeah, we've got a 2-stage situation here. There's a API, as we've been in the API world a lot today. There's an API which says, oh, excuse me, it's changed. And then separately, you've got to then go and process whichever video you need. And yes, that's likely to be the reason why the video looks bad for a moment, because you're pulling somebody new onto the system, and you probably had them at a lower resolution because if they're in the audience, they don't need to be at 1080p.
Right. And again, this also comes back to the Zoom Test Kitchen, how we make sure that, you actually give Zoom itself as a presenter the best quality, the best frame rate, the best capabilities to max out that 1080p. Because again, you could actually only have a 720p webcam, heaven forbid, but you'll never get a 1080p out of a 720p webcam because Zoom is not going to give it to you. It's
Yeah,
only
well,
gonna
let's blow our own trumpet here. We've got a system here that we get a bit excited and we'll start just shouting down the camera. But usually we have a system where we try and raise our hand and you know you're next. Now, if somebody was managing that and all the bandwidth and everything, then you could know that the person who's put their hand up and is going to be next on the screen, you could upgrade them to the higher resolution so that when they come live onto the screen, they are at the higher resolution. So if you did plan it all, in a more organized way, you could definitely make improvements in the quality of the inputs and keep the other people who are in the background, so to speak, at the lower resolution and keep the processing off. So it's all about planning again, isn't it, really?
Yeah, excellent question, Family Cyber Clinic. That was an excellent question. So yes, again, all three pieces of software are, of course, talking to Zoom. How they implement things, we can only speak specific from what our knowledge is based on the software that we've run ourselves. So that's why I can speak for vMix, and that's why Tony was able to speak when it comes to Mimo Live, as well as Robert when it comes to Mimo Live. Unfortunately, you're just too late where you could have actually asked David, and we could have actually had maybe some screen usage of him showing off his Ecamm installation. But next week, if you bring that up earlier, we could actually have David actually look into that a little more using Ecamm.
Or put it in Discord.
Or yes, of course, yes. Thanks, Frank. Yes, and definitely go to our Discord server, and I'll put a link in chat here momentarily on YouTube so that you can get in touch with our Discord server, as well as our other links on our main zoomtestkitchen.com website.
And I just wanted to also say that he can go to the actual Ecamm Discord. There's a Discord for Ecamm, and it has amazing information on it.
Good one, Tony. Absolutely. Yes, and same with vMix as well. Again, vMix Forms is very, very, very useful, and the developers are in there all the time. Support and developers are in there answering questions, and the community answers a lot of questions as well, specifically to vMix. And there is an actual specific section in the forums now that they have dedicated to vMix related Zoom questions / problems / this doesn't work for me, how come scenarios. And thank you, John. And I will add that link to chat in YouTube. And this is the link to the Discord invite for Ecamm. All right. Any other questions from our friends on YouTube? And John, what have you been up to?
Thank you. I'm not going to answer that question. I'm going to answer a different question.
All right.
I'd like to clarify the conversation we had about launching Zoom events and Zoom webinars and the Simulive option. And we've all been checking in the background. And yes, you can go into your, if you have an events license, you can go into your webinar section. You can start a webinar and it will give you the option to Simulive.
So the functionality that we were showing earlier today.
Yep. You don't have to go into events to get it to work. It is now on the webinar section as well.
Okay. And that just didn't happen, did it? It wasn't one of those, they're watching us again, was it?
I'm not sure. I don't think so. I think they might have done that.
They're always watching.
Okay.
Oh yeah, talking about always watching, I've got a little thing for you. This will make Frank really happy.
All right.
Do you realize that Zoom is listening to you even when you don't have a meeting running?
Dun, dun, dun.
I mean, that's
Tell us why, John.
If you open up the Zoom settings, then the microphone hears you. So has anyone proved that you have to open the Zoom settings window for that audio thing to appear? Does that turn the microphone on?
I guess the question I'd ask, John, is the microphone's on, but is the Zoom client taking the microphone audio and shipping it somewhere to Zoom where Zoom does something with it?
Or is it available to I haven't looked into this yet, is it available via an API so somebody could actually take the microphone sound even when you're not in a meeting? Yeah, I thought I'd get.
I think again, I'm processing and extending to my programmer's background. I think you could probably do that if you were running a Zoom SDK version on your machine. that could also be listening in. But I don't think there's a way other than through the app interface, the Marketplace app, to actually get audio out of the Zoom client into anything other than the Zoom client. That there's a tight linkage integration between the desktop app interface that we sort of play with to start meetings and all that kind of stuff, and what we use to attend meetings and webinars. And I don't think there's a way. I'm sure if you were a really smart hacker, you could go man in the middle sort of a thing, but I don't think there's a way for any other app to just go, oh, I want to go get audio from there.
Yeah, I don't think there
It would
is.
have an easier job getting it straight from Windows. Anything can plug into Windows and go, hey, I want to get the audio. And yeah.
Yeah, it was just what it struck me about 3 hours ago. It was quite spooky that I'd left my, I've been playing around with what headphones I was using. So I'd left my computer running, I left Zoom running, it had the settings window open, it was on the audio tab, and I was off on another computer, and I suddenly looked around and for something, and out the corner of my eye, I could see that little input level going up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down as I was talking. It didn't go anywhere, but it looked, yeah. I had a creepy moment.
Yeah, we gotta wonder what those computers are doing behind our back sometimes. I understand that. All right, my crew here is very quiet, so YouTube, give us some questions and any other issues that you might have.
Mike,
let us know. Go ahead,
Mike, you were talking a little bit about Zoom events. There is an update scheduled for tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
There are some things in it that I think are kind of neat. I wrote a little 5-point article in LinkedIn, about some of them. To me, the most exciting part really is the Simulive to Live piece that isn't even mentioned in the update. But a couple of the other things that they're actually doing is they are allowing a couple of the additional email notifications that they send, the ones to special roles people, speakers, exhibitors, and that sort of thing, the ability to customize and edit those emails. They were below the gray bar before, and you couldn't customize those. You could only do the ones above that, and they've now been, we'll see tomorrow, probably moved above the gray line. There might still be a couple of them that aren't done. They also are turning on the ability to rewrite, customize your landing page for multi-session events and repeating session events, where you've been able to do that for single session events. And I don't know, there was another flavor that it would work. So that's been enhanced as well. One of the other cool parts that I don't know about you guys, but when there's a CSV upload and no XLS upload, it means that if I've created data in my table that are formulas from other parts of the table, I have to take my XLS file and save it as CSV and then upload it. They now say that they can use XLS and XLSX documents for bulk uploading of speakers, sessions, and pre-registration data.
Okay, so that's a bit of integration that they're getting from Microsoft. That's definitely on that. That's good. Because again, the XLSX is more XML based, and of course the old standard of XLS is more Microsoft proprietary. So that would be a lot more bulky of a file because it's keeping a lot more proprietary information inside. But that's good. That's good that they're expanding those formats because it is important. And of course, they know that the world is still using Microsoft Office. So, how much easier to make it when it comes to that better. I know what? Even us Linux guys are using the LibreOffice, which we have to go, what? Do we have to save it? We really have to save it as an XLS? We really don't want to. But it does let us know, you sure you want to? We don't like it, but you can if you want. And we're like, yeah, we should, because we're sending it someone that is non-LibreOffice friendly. or open office.
Couple of
friendly.
things for Zoom events, producers before they publish their event. One is it used to be impossible to actually look at what the lobby was going to look like until you published the event. And now they've got a preview capability of the lobby. So as you're deciding what's going to be featured and what's going to be hidden and that sort of stuff, that's now viewable before publishing.
Good.
Let's see here.
The add to calendar feature is what I like, Ray. Is that the when you got the link to the events, you've got an add to calendar option for putting it in your calendar rather than doing what I always do is join the event and then grab all the data and then come back out the event before it started.
Yeah. One of the small things to me, but big for some people, is that if you have an event that can't be registered from certain places like India or any other place that you checked or unchecked the box to say, I don't want anybody from this country registering. It used to be they would see the registration button and they wouldn't know until later that their country wasn't included. It's going to say right on that initial registration page now that the country that you're looking at Zoom from can't do that. The sort of the controversial thing in my view is the whole release of the video on demand content management system piece is supposed to be started, and there's I think a 60-day grace period where nothing will change, but they've put in the code to enable things, and they're going to start charging you if you have videos on your hub for viewing, not inside an event where they're recordings within the event, but if you make one available outside on the hub, I think it's 300 views, and after 300 views, you're going to have to start paying Zoom per view, per person, per hub, per month is the way I understand it. And I've told people high and low in the Zoom organization, I don't understand it. And if I don't understand it, I don't know why I would expect anybody else to understand it. But if
that sounds messy to me, Ray.
Tomorrow, Mike went in and looked at one of the videos on my hub, I would get charged whatever this fee is, and it's even that part's confusing, but I would get charged for Mike. And as long as he looked at other videos on my hub for the next 30 days, there would be no additional tick mark next to Mike's name. But 31 days later, if Mike comes back and looks at something, it's like, no, we've wiped the slate clean. Mike, is going to cost you another $1.35 or whatever it is. I don't know.
And that's based on events, or is that based on sessions?
It's not based on the event and it's not based on the session. It's based on the video on demand part of the hub. So when you go to the hub that says, like if you've been to Josh Bragg's, office hours hub, it's a training and enablement hub, and there's a variety of videos that are down below the events. You can see the events that are coming up. Down below that are just videos that you can watch. For those of us who are not Zoom, if you have a large following and a whole bunch of people watch them, they get cut off, or you pay money to allow additional people to view them. And sort of as I alluded to earlier, that's going to force me to move all of my viewable content over to Vimeo and VHX.tv.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. That's why I made the comment of it being messy, because of the fact that, one person is coming, if they want it to be similar to a Zoom YouTube, one person is coming to look at one video, they're not coming to look at 100 videos. So I don't know where the logic is there based on that. And then the other thought that I had to that is that, okay, so now I watched one video and I'm now taking up, as you're saying, now you got 299 to go. So if I actually had 300 people come to watch one video, because I decided to just have that one video up, I'm now empty.
Right. Right.
And as soon as 301 comes, I'm getting dinged above and beyond that. Now, the 300 number, is that a number they're talking about, Ray, or is that published? Or
I don't remember whether it's 300 or 800. They're both sort of shaped the same, and I don't know. I would have to look.
Understood, but
There's a whole document that just talks about that whole process, and it's very big, and it's got sidebar panels and stuff like that, and I haven't totally assimilated it. Let me mention here real briefly. I lied earlier when I said the webinar Simulive to Live was not in the Zoom events piece. It's been updated a couple of times since the first time I took a good process look through it. It's now in there as I'm going through it again. So yeah, they've updated that.
So Robert's actually giving you is thanking you, Ray. He's saying, now I understand why event organizers are charging an additional fee to view recordings for 30 days after the event, and then an additional fee for up to a year.
Yeah.
That
the last one of the items in there is it doesn't specifically say production studio. They don't know. This came out of sucked out of some document somewhere. The implementation of the preview and program in the Windows platform has been enhanced to eliminate black flashes with switching between scenes. We've seen those black intermediary screens in Production Studio when you switch between things, and apparently they're saying that they've eliminated that, which they said a few months ago. It got better, but it wasn't really without issue, and so we'll take a look at that once that releases tomorrow.
Yeah. So are we expected, Ray? I DM'd you this week. Did you get any feedback from Josh if our Wednesdays will be happening again?
I asked him both in an email and in team chat, and he has not responded. I think he said something, and again, I'm old and I don't remember stuff. I think he said in one meeting somewhere, it will probably be mid to late January before we have everything up and running. So,
Okay.
soon as I figure out Josh is back online with his Wednesday morning office hours piece, which he also told us that he's not going to run every one of those. It'll be a different member of the team, and he will probably run the release notes versions and that sort of thing. So we're already missing you, Josh, if you're listening to this, to help explain some of the things in tomorrow's release. But hopefully by the end of the month we'll have that, and I'll publish that out in all the places that I know our Zoom events people hang out.
Right. Cool. All right. Just letting our YouTube our audience know that yes, by all means, please, if there's any other questions or comments like Robert has been giving us in YouTube, please let us know in chat. So Frank, out of the updates this week, did you have anything glaring that we might have missed when David was going over them?
No,
No.
I don't think it was a huge release.
Okay. And next week's release on Monday, I think I did that right. Is it the
16th?
16th? Oh, it's 16th.
What was it? The 16th? No, I can't remember.
13th. Upcoming release, January 13th.
13th. Yeah. So I was right. Yeah. Next Monday. So
6.36.
it just looked like to me, those just fixes. Am I wrong?
Well, a big chunk of it is that a companion for Zoom hosted modules, which is what we talked about for quite a while, where I guess you do your own hosting outside of the US. There was some stuff for team chat, and there were some resolved issues. So
right. So that to me is coming across like a bug fix. Or
it seems like to me like they bundled a couple of things. One was for the people who wanted AI companion, but they were hosting their own Zoom on-prem outside of USA. And then the other one was just that
Since
Patch or whatever.
since this came right on the heels of 6.3.5 within days, in the development world, what that usually signals to me is that they probably wanted to push this out earlier, along with some of the other AI 2.0 stuff, but it wasn't quite ready or tested out or whatever, and they got that done and said, "Oh well, let's toss it in this update," which we always see a couple of days after a major update. It's like, "Oh, here's some fixes of things that we didn't know were going to be broken," and they probably just tacked that on.
The big thing for regular users was basically there's a bunch of new Zoom team chat improvements.
Yeah.
So if you're not excited about Zoom team chat, then you won't care that much.
Well, contrary to David, I use it darn near every day. I've got a number of Zoomies on my chat roster. Josh Bragg and I just sort of linked up on Team Chat a couple of weeks ago. He ignored my previous requests, so
Terrible. Terrible.
But I do have a couple of other Zoom events guys who are in the technical account management space that I kind of regularly go to when I've got real down and dirty detailed questions about those sorts of things. I've got most of the Zoom community staff really on direct DM through Team Chat, and I've even got Frank, I think, on my direct Team Chat. Yeah.
You
Yeah,
got me too.
I
Yep.
think it just depends on your community and who you know.
Yeah.
What a lot of people are using Microsoft. Some people are using other things, but it's got its place, I guess.
Yeah. The Streamlive guys asked me to join one of their sort of external input groups, and it's like, okay, we're using Slack. It's like, okay, I'll do that too.
Yeah.
I think
yeah.
when organizations buy Zoom and they get that as a built-in function, then you might adopt it, or you might not, depending if you have something else in place at your organization. So it just depends on the culture, I think, too.
Right. And Ray, you're mentioning something and that it triggered a question that I did have for you was that did you get the domain situation rectified for yourself?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was 3 weeks of back and forth between me and the tier 2 person, who then talked to engineering, who then talked to the tier 2 person, who then talked to me. It was 3 weeks, and we tried a whole bunch of stuff, and it never really worked. Let me take 1 minute to re-explain for those that might not have caught that before. In Zoom events, you can create a custom domain name for where your event landing pages and lobby and all that sort of stuff appear to come from. So I had events.goodclicks.com instead of events.zoom.us. And it had been working since March, and it quit working sometime in November. And I went through this whole process in December, and I finally reached out to one of my Zoom technical account management guys and said, "Hey, do you think you could help here?" And he stepped in, and within a day or two, he worked with the back end guys and got it fixed. And there's a part of it that I understand, and there's a part of it that I don't understand because no one will explain to me what they did. We finally got the cert to work. I got my SSL certificate from Namecheap.com. Yeah, $11, and it's and I had anyway another one. And you get 3 files. You get the private cert file, and you get the CA bundle, which is the certificate authority bundle file. And the instructions from Zoom says, give us your private cert file, and also then upload your private key so that we can load it onto our server. and they couldn't make that work. They were getting the error. So once someone finally figured, oh, what we really need is that CA bundle file, but wait, don't call it the CA bundle file. You have to rename the file so that the whatever's looking for the right thing, I don't know, upload that, and then it worked, but I was still getting this Axios error that I had been getting before. And it turns out somebody in Zoom had to do something internally. That's something I don't even know and understand. But now I at least have confidence that if you want to register your domain with them, as long as you inquire first, do you want just the private cert file or do you want the CA bundle cert file? And how do you want me to send it to you? It's all uploads from the thing. I'm reasonably confident that it'll work with anybody's SSL cert now. But that was a month and a half of not working.
Right. So was it, again, from my point of view, I know a lot of the back end, so I'll just throw this out there. Was it because of the fact that you're also using events dot, your domain name, or what? No. So it was not related to that. Okay.
No, it was the fact that I had all of the it's not the DKIM file, but the CNAME and all of the text file things that were in there. And so Zoom was recognizing that it was a domain name that they should use. But then once they flipped that around with the HTTPS on front of it, it was throwing an error that the certificate does not seem to be valid because of blah blah blah, some sort of error message. Never mind. I won't nag on Zoom. It shouldn't have been that difficult to figure out if I had an opportunity really to kind of work directly with the engineer. And I have to say that the person I was working with in tier 2 on Zoom was very good and communicative. And every day that there was an update, I got an update. But that process, if MajorLeagueBaseball.com had an error with their system, they wouldn't want to be down for 4 weeks. I don't think.
Right.
So,
yeah. So that's not cool. But yeah, so again, that's the Axios error is different, and I don't specifically know from my system administrative experience much about the Axios system that they're using. When it comes to the information that you gave them, it should have worked as long as it was implemented properly on all the web servers, and I'll use that in quotation marks because again, it's complicated because it is a content delivery network that they have. So if I'm coming from Europe, I'm all of a sudden hitting this domain name. It's not specifically on one machine, guaranteed. It's on multiple machines. So I could see it that. And Ray, was it sporadic or every time there?
It was consistent. If it had been sporadic, it'd have been one thing. Oh gosh, now it's working now. No, it either worked or didn't work.
Right. So it was basically, so the Axios errors were happening no matter if somebody tried from Europe, somebody tried from Canada, somebody tried from US, it was breaking all the time. Right. So again, that is more, I can understand that more. That is more in their main functionality of accepting SSL certs from customers to do that functionality. And John, you were saying you had problems with this too. I don't know if you're still with us or not, but I see that you had that problem this week as well on chat.
Yeah, I was having a problem. I wondered if it was that I had a different domain name on my account. So I've got a different subdomain on my account as the login. I was using multiple domain names. Basically, I've got the main account is one domain, it's another domain, and it came up with a domain not up to date type error. But maybe I'll give it another go and have a look at it more closely. Because
Rain.
this is
Send me
something about
information.
events.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is good because what I'm finding with most of my events now is I'm tending to be pay as you go, and I'm now in the habit now of creating separate hubs for each
Yeah.
organization rather than just chucking it, because they now actually interact. They actually interact with the events hub, which Zoom will be happy. They don't just dump themselves into the webinar now. They're actually interacting with the hub. So now I've got to build separate hubs for each organization and do a little bit of logos and a bit of this and that, make it all look pretty so that they're in the right place. So it's all good. It's all going forward, but it just preloads the whole building of an event with more stuff to do, which is pretty and nice, but it's still more stuff to do. Which is why whenever the Zoom give the ability to upload stuff by a spreadsheet, or to copy or to duplicate stuff from one hub to another, these are all things which, if you're running multiple events of different types over a period of time, these are things that are really important to you.
Right. So it's becoming more production company friendly now.
Yeah. And if you want the small event guys to make use of all the tools, you've got to make it easy for them. Otherwise, they're not going to bother, are they?
Exactly. And that has been a big complaint that I know we've spoken to Josh and his team about quite often. And just remind the group, John, about every time that you set up a new hub, is that under your license, or you do have to get a specific license on that?
No, if you use pay as you go, you can effectively run lots of hubs. If you are on a
subscription,
thank you. If you've got a pay subscription service, you can swap hubs, but if you do it too many times, and I'm not going to tell what the number is because it's a Zoom secret. Well, it isn't really, but if you keep swapping hubs too many times, then the great Zoom system will assume you're playing the system and you're cheating, and it will then stop you swapping hubs around. But if you're running one hub for one event and then 2 weeks later you create another event and you create another hub, you're okay. If you keep swapping around between them every day, Zoom will soon stop you and say, no, you're cheating. If you want to do that, you're going to have to buy another hub. You're going to have to subscribe to more. It's just like the idea of people having one Zoom account, and then borrowing it and using it in lots of different places by lots of different people, or people trying to run Netflix under multiple accounts and bouncing it around. If you just need to go from one hub to another hub to do something different, that's fine. But if you're going to keep swapping around, then they're going to tell you off and say, you can't do that. Give us some money and buy it properly. Which is reasonable.
So as we speak, as of this video, as of today, for production companies, the best scenario would be to answer the question. So getting Zoom sessions, or obviously not getting Zoom events if you want to do, because you would actually want to have a customized hub per customer, correct?
Correct. And I tell people that people that'll listen, like you guys, but other people, come to me before you buy a Zoom events license. I will deep dive into what your use case is and how you want to use it. And I'll advise you based on, having been, neck deep in Zoom events since it was first GA, and tell you what I think is your best move. With a pay per attendee type of licensing, you can create one hub for each of your clients. And you can have a client that's going to have a 50-person event and do it just fine. And then 6 months later, they're going to have a 5,000-person event and it'll work just fine. The problem with the subscription base is you're paying a lot of money for a capped limit. And so if you get that, I think there's a 3,000 user hub Zoom Events subscription service. You get that 3,000 and you have a couple of people who do small events. You're overpaying what you need to pay if you pay that huge annual price. But then let's say you get a few people with 1,000 people or 1,500 people. That's really great. But then someone comes to you and says, I'm going to have 5,000 people. Now you can't accommodate them because you have a subscription license that's based on 3,000. You have to go to your Zoom salesperson, and you have to kind of haggle with how are we going to do this? And I haven't talked to anybody that's done it. I assume it can be done. But the reality is, you know what your charges are going to be if you use the Zoom Events pay per attendee license. They give you, if you're going to buy increments of 1,000 seats, it's $1.84 a person. And if you want to get, I don't know, there's another increment up, then they get down to, like, I think as little as $1.60 a person. If you just buy a 50, all I'm going to have is 50 people, and then I'm never going to use this again. You want to buy a 50-person license? It's $2.50 a person. That's the most expensive Zoom Events will get per person in a pay per attendee license. I also have a Zoom Events subscription license for 100 people. It's $1,490 a year. I don't get my money's worth out of it yet. I use it for a couple of things, and I'm okay with it because I get a lot of education out of it. But yeah, kind of like John says, use it for small events for myself and for a lot of research. I put all of my test events, and I'm going to be testing the whole, release notes once they come out in there, and it doesn't charge me anything. It doesn't cost me anything. I can invite people to come, and as long as there's no more than 100 people per event, I'm good. I kind of call that my Good Clicks auditorium. No more than 100 people. If someone wants to have an event, I'll create you an event, make you a co-editor, and as long as you don't need more than 100 people, I just put on there Good Clicks gave you use of the facility, and I'm happy to do that for people that need it.
Very, very cool, Ray. So you've heard it here. So reach out to Ray, and you can find Ray on all the socials, as we call it. That's the infamous YouTube influencer comment. Robert does have a specific question for John, and I'm going to read it out loud here. Can you talk us through how you have organized your licenses? So do you have one license holder and log into one Zoom session account and just have different hubs for each of the pay per attendee people?
Okay, I'm going to watch Ray's face as I do this because I might misspeak, but this is how I do it. When my customer comes along and says that we've got an event happening in the future and she needs it all sorted out, and she always likes to organize things like 2 months ahead of time, and I really don't want to organize things 2 months ahead of time because I don't know how many people are going to turn up. I don't know what's going to happen. So what I do is I go into plain old Zoom and I create a meeting. Yeah, that's all I do. I create a meeting and I send her the meeting ID, and that keeps her happy. And she doesn't watch YouTube, so she'll never see this. But if she does, hi Shonda. So we'll set up an event on the meeting ID. And until Zoom changes things, there are some clever things you can do with that meeting ID, because now I've got a meeting ID, I've now got a point of reference for that meeting. I can book it in, so it's in my system, it's in my diary, it's in the Zoom setup, and I know it's there. When I get closer to the meeting, I can go in, and you can do this to all the Zoom meetings. You can upgrade a Zoom meeting to a webinar. So I don't always, but I mostly do that stage. So I upgrade it from a Zoom meeting to a Zoom webinar. And then closer to the time when I want to set the event up, I then go into Zoom Events, and you can go into Zoom Events and you can create a new event from scratch, or you can put a meeting or webinar ID, and it will take that and it will suck that in to the system. So if I've created anybody in that meeting or webinar, that data gets pulled in to, and he's on a holding screen now, so I can't even get Ray to confirm this. That data is all sucked into Zoom Events. But that meeting ID,
John, just for your sake, Ray is listening, so he'll jump in. Yeah, he's listening. Go ahead.
So that meeting ID that I created at the very beginning still exists and works all the way through the system, as far as I understand, as far as I use it. So that still exists. That's still there. Like Ray, I have 2 Zoom Events licenses. I have one for pay-as-you-go, which I use for larger events and events where we don't know the size. And I have a subscription one, which I use for the events that I do myself. I'm doing increasingly more events of my own, and I can't cope with an audience of more than 100 anyhow, so 100 is fine for me. I can take that meeting that I've created and put it into either license. And because Zoom is so nice now, if it turns out that it's in the wrong one, I can transfer it from one to the other. So Zoom's got very good now at allowing us to build something, and then if it's not in the right place, you can move it across from one hub, which has got my pay-per-view, to the other hub, which is my subscription. And you can move it back. I'm guessing if you keep bouncing it backwards or forwards, Zoom's going to get confused. But you can certainly pull it into one. And then if you find it's the wrong one. So we've had a few situations where we've had small meetings until I put it into the subscription system. And then I get a message saying, oh, no, we're starting to sell a lot of tickets. It's going to be 150, 200 people to this meeting. Okay, fine. I can just transfer it out of the subscription system and put it into the pay-per-view system. And then it carries on working. And the advantage of the pay-per-view, as we said, and this is the other part of it, is that when for each of the organizations, because we've got about 8 different medical groups that we look after, each of them's got their own hub. Now, you can only do that in your pay-per-view side of the system, because if you did it in a subscription model, you only get one hub. And if you want more hubs, you'd have to start paying more money on subscription. So the subscription model has my hub, use it for my little events, and I can create it all at the beginning on the meetings and then upload it and upgrade it to what I need. And then I have to watch the numbers, because you've got to make sure that you've, as Ray said, you've bought enough tickets to be able to allocate to that meeting, but not too many that they're going to expire in a year's time and you have not used them. So I always have in my head $2 per person. But remember, it's $2 per person, but you need to make sure that you tell the event what your limit is. And it's the number of people that turn up to the hub that cost you money. So there are situations where you will say, I want the limit to be 150 people, even though I know only 100 people can get in, because people will book for things, pay their money even for things, and then there's something better on the TV. They'll watch that instead. They won't attend the meeting, and they will just wait for the recording to turn up. And if they don't physically, electronically, so to speak, physically turn up to the event, they don't count as a cost against Zoom. Did I miss anything, Ray?
No, and the whole thing that you're talking about is great. I like it, and in some cases, I don't really do too much creating of meetings and converting them. The one thing I will mention, you said no more than $2, and I said no more than $2.50. And the difference is that if you buy a license, a pay per attendee license that is Zoom sessions only, so you don't get multi-day sessions, just Zoom individual sessions, that is maximum of $2 per person and then goes down as you go. Here's the other thing that I discovered with a new client of mine who says, oh gosh, I just want Zoom sessions. And I said, okay, well, I'll just put you under my pay per attendee plan. But gosh, why do I want to charge her $2.50 a person when really we could do it for $2 a person and I save her 50 cents a person? Okay. Well, one Zoom user cannot have 2 pay per attendee licenses assigned to them. I've got 2 licensed Zoom users, Ray and Zoom One, and I had Zoom One with the PPA license, and I wanted to assign the PPA sessions license to them, and it said, nope, no can do. So I ended up assigning that directly to me. Here's my approach. It's a little bit different than John's, that when a client, serious client, comes to me and says, look, I really want to do this event. The very first thing I do is create a hub. I say, give me a 1920 by 1080 piece of artwork that represents your organization, and I throw that on the hub. And I create an event, and I say, look, sort of give me an idea of your schedule and blah, blah, blah. And I create a mini event in there that gives them what the look and feel of their event can look like. And I tell them how much customization can be done and that sort of thing. And then basically, we'll shut that down and I'll create the actual event. Sometimes I'll just convert the insides of the other event, move it to the right days, and just flesh it right on out. What I did with the Maori of New Zealand, if you recall, that I did back in March, they came to me in November the year before and said, hey, we want to do this. And I trained a small team, 10 to 12 volunteers, on how to put in all of the information about the speakers, all of the information about the sessions, the exhibitor information, and basically they did 95% of the work of actually getting that up to speed. And all I had to do was kind of keep up with, well, how many registrations are there going to be? Stephen Blythe, who was the kind of the executive producer on their side, originally told me, 2 years ago when we had this, it was like 1,200 people. I said, okay, I'll get a 1,000 pay-per attendee license, which is normally $1,840, but we had to pay extra for this license because the event that Stephen wanted was 10 days. And what you get with the regular Zoom events license is a maximum of 6 days. They don't have to be concurrent, but you get a maximum of 6 days. And I went to Zoom and said, hey, how do I get 10? And they said, oh, if you're going to buy a 1,000 user license, we'll charge you an extra 25% on top of that, and we'll bump you up to 10 days. And they did. And but then we got to registrations, and registrations got to be greater than 1,000. And Stephen said, well, we know that some of those people won't show, but then the registration reached 2,000. So we ordered another 1,000 block. Eventually he had over 5,000 registrants. And all the way through the event, we were keeping a close eye on the thing because we ended up buying 3 increments of 1,000 PPA licenses. And if I remember correctly, we were like 100 shy of reaching the 3,000 mark. So, the PPA, I could have never afforded a subscription license at the 3,000 user mark. And it's not cost effective if you're going to have one event. That was my big event for the year. If you're going to have 3,000 person events every other week and making money from other people, then buy the big license because you'll save some money doing that as opposed to getting the pay-per attendee. But the way most of us operate with our clients, I think that if you are an event producer for other people, the pay-per attendee license is the best way to go.
Okay, and this question is from Robert. It's a follow-up question, and we'll say, so John, do you have all the pay-per attendee licenses associated with the same Zoom user?
That is a very good follow-up question. I did at one point have both the pay-per attendee and the subscription with the same, under the same user. And I just got confused all the time and insecure, thinking, is this event on pay-per-view or subscription? And it is actually easier now to find out, because if you go to the bottom of the window of the event, it actually now tells you. So that's been added. So that's taken my worry. But I used to have 2 separate users, but now I have. I have a business account, because in the UK we're allowed to have one to 250 business accounts, whereas in the States you have to have 10 of them before you can have business. So I've got 3 business accounts. One of those business accounts is just on its own. One of those business accounts has the events pay-per-view, and one of the business accounts has the paid license. And then I shuffle between, and then I've got a hint for the users. But of course, a meeting can be created by one user for any of the users, because I've got the tick box to say they can all create users for each other. But I have separate users for the events now, because it's just easier to remember who's in charge of which one. But
you've got 3 Zoom users, but all on one organizational account, correct?
I have 3 paid business account users on one account.
Gotcha.
And I have 2 or 3 free users on that account as well. So 3 of them can make meetings. One of them can do webinars outside Zoom events. So although that license I turn on and off, because there are times when I'm running bigger webinars and I just get a webinars license that month, and then I run my webinar events there. Because if you don't need all the back end stuff, and if I'm running a Zoom event of my own, I don't need all the back end stuff, because I can do it through vMix and all those things. I don't need Backstage for myself. So I will run that in a webinar account, because you can get more seats much cheaper than you can if you buy it through Zoom Session, Zoom Events. And then for external customers, we run it on the Zoom Events. And to be honest, and Zoom, you probably don't want to move this feature now, because otherwise you'll lose me. The main reason for me running Zoom Events and Zoom Sessions is Backstage. My speakers love Backstage. So I'm not surprised that Zoom do not offer it on the standard licenses, because it is a really good feature. And if I didn't have all these extra tools, I'd be using Production Studio as well. But I don't need that, because I've got all my own production studio equipment here that I can run it within the event. So my speakers love Backstage, and I should never be seen on an event, but my screen always has a information card on it, either giving details about who the speaker is or what's coming next. So if you watch my screen, it will always be an information. And when I have got an event, then I'll be at the top with all the other little people, and I can spotlight myself to do video outtakes. And I don't do screen share for me. I do screen share for the speakers, because the speakers understand that concept and they are happy with that concept. And of course, they can practice it in Backstage, so they can practice there where they're going to share the screen, and then they can come onto the stage and they can share the screen and they can do their speaking. But I use my video feed, and I just use vMix to pull anything in there, so that I can tell people what's going on. If I got to do a video because it's a pre-recorded video, or I've got to put sponsors messages, or I've just got to put a message to say, lunchtime now, we return that, and put a clock at the bottom. All that goes on my screen. And it works quite well.
John, the corollary question maybe that will help Robert sort of understand too, is that when you have a pay per attendee license, it is only assigned to one person. You can't split a pay per attendee license to multiple people. But what you can do is, once you have that license, you can assign to someone else in your organization who has a licensed, they don't have to be a Zoom Events license, they're just a licensed account. You can assign them co-owner status to that particular license and to that hub. And so they're able to, I make my Zoom One owner of my main PPA, but me as Ray, I can create an event in that particular hub. All I have to do is hit the right pull down and then click add event, and it adds it to the right hub. Again, I had to, when I got the sessions license, I could not assign that to Zoom One. I had to assign that to Ray. And as John said, you have to sort of figure out how's that going to work. I still pay for monthly one of the Zoom kind of legendary licenses, legacy licenses. Back in October of 21, you could get Zoom Webinar for $97 a month. And they said, oh, for an extra $20 a month, for $99 a month, you can get Zoom Events 500. That was sort of the opening bid for Zoom Events 500. for $99 a month. And so I actually have that as well, that I use it primarily because it's just Zoom webinar. And I also use that legacy license. They don't even refer to it anymore in their literature, but it's not the subscription license. It's the old legacy license. And I continue to use that. John, you had another question in the chat about how late can you buy a PPA?
Well, yeah, I have.
Go ahead.
So on the meetings, on the Zoom meetings and Zoom webinars, I have been known to not get my maths right, and I have been known to start an event. I've only done it twice, wrong twice, and I'm not going to do it a third time. I've started an event and I suddenly realized that it's got to 100 people attending and it's not gone any further. And I have actually, and sometimes this is the whole issue about getting your licenses on the right person. So I'd set up the event on the wrong person. So person A was running the event, person B had the license for 500 webinars. And I have been able to update the licensing and you have to buy it and then you have to assign it. So you've got to do both. And I've had lots of people they bought the license and then they've not assigned it. And that goes wrong as well. But I've actually bought a license, assigned it 10 minutes into a meeting, and it's then suddenly gone over the 100 and it started working. I've never dared do that with an events license because I don't want to do the cock up anyhow. But certainly within meetings, if you find that you're in a meeting and you need a 500 seat license because a load of people have turned up, you can buy it, you can assign it. And although I don't recommend it, Zoom will I'll say mostly because I'm not guaranteeing it on their behalf, mostly will allow that license to then tick up to your new limit and you can carry on.
I actually
tried that late so I don't know how late, Ray, you've done that for an events license.
So let me go back to your regular webinar license. I experienced this when I was a member of the Parliamentary Association. We had our annual meeting, and whoever they hired to host the event, they were told, oh, we'll be lucky to have 500 people in the webinar. But we had some of the team that does the actual editing of Robert's Rules of Order, and there was a new version of that coming out that year. And I remember kind of getting into the webinar early. I'm always an early arriver. And then, I saw the number of attendees kind of climb to 500 and it quit. And, then all of a sudden we heard, for people that can't get in, well, of course, the people that are already in can't help the people that can't get in. If you can't get in, go to YouTube. We're going to stream it to YouTube. There'll be a little delay in this meeting. And 3 or 4 or 5 minutes later, they went, oh man, the YouTube stream's not working. And it was a couple of minutes later that then the number started to go up again. So they did exactly what you did. They bought on the fly an upgrade to the license, assigned it to the user, which then magically appeared on that open event. Now, the people at Zoom tell you, don't rely on that happening. I'm here to tell you it can happen. You have to be pretty darn lucky. So over to the Zoom events piece. If you've got a Zoom events subscription license, the day of the event, if you get more attendees signing up, they can sign up, but they can't attend. When you get to the 500th person or whatever your limit is, good luck getting another license done through sales or even through the website or that sort of thing and getting it all assigned. I don't know how that would work, and I certainly wouldn't trust that from a Zoom events perspective. When you're doing a pay per attendee, you can set the number of registrations that you want, but there's another checkbox below that says, I'm okay with overage charges. And if you read it kind of wonky, it looks like overage charges, which, of course that would apply to me, but overage charges. And basically what it says is if you have paid for a block of 1,000 PPA licenses, 1840, $1.84 a person, and you get to 1,001 people, if you check that box, it will continue to let people in, and it will tick off an overage charge, which it will charge you the maximum, either $2.40 for events or $2 for sessions, and just basically add that to your bill at the end of the billing cycle. So you can either check that box or not check that box on whether you want to do the overage thing. With my New Zealand event, the event was scheduled to start like in 2 or 3 days, I think. And I basically went to my Zoom account rep and said, you know, what I need you to do is get one license and assign it to my account and then bill me for it and have it take place. And because I was having one of those guys take care of it, the license actually showed up that day and I got billed for it that night. I think if you go in to assign it yourself, you probably get charged for it first, and then it doesn't come in until the charge goes through. Maybe, I don't know, but you know, you could say I want another 1,000 because I'm sure we're going to have another 500, and I'll use the other 500 before the end of the year's up. But you've got that safety net for that overage piece, which I think is pretty cool.
Right. So a good tip for the production companies out there is to, you know, understand that you should actually, especially with your PPA, pay per attendee type license that you're using, is to make sure that, you know, don't necessarily just, you know, when you don't want it to hit that hard level, as Ray was saying, or you're going to get dinged the overages, or you won't have anybody actually join. Correct, Ray?
Well, yeah, and the reality is, if you are in a situation where you are doing multiple Zoom events for people regularly throughout the year, I mean, and sizable events, you can kind of predict what your usage base is. You know, just go buy more licenses for what you're pretty sure you'll be able to use up in a year, and you know, you'll probably save some money even if you didn't use the last 10 of those licenses before they expired. You got them for a lot cheaper than if you'd have bought the next lower increment. And the total price difference would be okay. But you know, if you are constantly churning out events and using them in pay per attendee, you know, just order 1,000 or 10,000 even if you want, and know that I'm going to get through those. Like me, I've got a few clients that want to use Zoom events and a few that aren't really kind of, we just want an all day webinar sort of a thing. You know, have it go yeah, as minimal as possible, but try and keep up with it. Yeah.
Right. Very cool. Okay. So I'll do the last call for any other questions or comments from the YouTube land, and I'll wait for that so that you guys can catch up because we're a bit delayed. But any other thoughts or topics we want to talk about, gang, that is left with me here?
I'm good. I'm gonna have to go. I got a couple other things I'm working on. So yeah. Good kitchen today. I couldn't get the word kitchen out of my mouth. Good kitchen today, guys. You know?
Exactly. All right, and they are fairly quiet, and we're still getting lots of love coming from the YouTube. That's good. They're hitting the love button, so we do have people watching us. So if that is actually true, oh, and who's sharing? Go ahead, John.
So this is the thing we were talking about in the number of attendees. Now this is a license, so I'm physically limited to 100 attendees on this license, but I can allow 150 people to be registered. So only 100 people can get in, but 150 people can be registered. And then, as Ray said, when you got pay per attendee, you've got another limit, which is how many people you allow to buy the tickets on the pay per attendee.
Is that your subscription license?
That's a subscription license, so it doesn't have the other number in it.
So they have the warning there for you that, look, if you oversell and those people try to get in, they're not going to be able to get in. And it's like selling too many tickets to a concert and telling the last 100 people at the door, sorry, we have to close the door now.
Yep.
Can you
But if
screen
you
share
the
again?
day before decided that you needed the paper attendee, you could transfer it across to your hub that's got the paper attendee license, and then as many people as you're going to want to pay for can then turn up.
Frank wants you to screen share again.
Okay.
If you want to indulge me.
No problem at all.
Thanks. Down at the bottom there, click on that customize the message for attendee that join after the session is full.
Okay. This is a picture, so I'll
Oh,
screen.
sorry. Yeah.
That's all
no
right.
problem.
I'll screen share the proper app. Still got it open. Let's pull up the event first. There. Then you don't want to come to this meeting. It's all about women's bits, so you wouldn't get in and you wouldn't understand it if you got there.
All right, and here we go.
Surprisingly, we never get Zoom bombed, but what we're looking at, I don't think a Zoom bomb would last more than 3 seconds. So we've got the attendees.
Yeah, I was just looking for the customize message aspect.
There we are. And then you can get customized message, and you can put a message in there.
We're sorry we took your money, but you can't get in. And you
Well,
can't
I
watch
mean,
the recording
You can have
afterwards.
Zoom events with free like free tickets. You don't have to charge, right?
Well, it's limited to 100 attendees, whether it's free or paid.
Yeah. So I'm saying you didn't necessarily take anyone's money. They just
Correct.
they showed up too late. We're full.
And certainly if it was a free event, you could also live stream your individual sessions to YouTube or something. That's an option too.
Or if you have video on demand, you could say the video will be available tomorrow at these coordinates or something.
Yeah.
Yep.
My strategy going forward on the post VOD CMS thing will be to use primarily Production Studio to produce the individual sessions, upload those sessions to my Vimeo account, and then create a product on Vimeo OTT, which is vhx.tv.
Right.
And let's say it's a paid event and it's, I don't know, $50 a person to get in. And if I get to capacity at that point, I'll drop it over into the video on demand under Vimeo and sell post-event access to all of the video for like $25 or something like that.
So, just switching gears for a second. The Zoom SimuLive transition from recording to live. I wonder if in the admin reports section there'll be any data specifically about how many people watch the pre-recorded SimuLive part versus who watched the
You'll be able
live.
to calculate that. You'll be able to calculate that because in Zoom events, there's the start time that they started watching and the end time when they stopped watching.
Right. I just wonder if there'll be specific metrics that breaks it down by here's how many people watch the pre-roll and here's who watched live, or some people might skip.
SimuLive got to be really big. SimuLive to live got to be really big. I think they might enhance that.
Yeah.
But currently everything just goes, how many minutes were they in the session?
Yeah. Yeah. Something to watch.
Yeah.
No pun intended. They're pretty good about metrics. So I mean.
Yeah. Again, we all know that they're logging it anyways, but then just actually pulling it from the logs is another thing.
There's lots of OTP solutions out there. You don't necessarily have to use Zooms if you don't like the cost model or the pricing model.
Well, I think it's going to be interesting how long it takes the general public to realize they're being sold recordings. So
OTT, whatever you want to call it. Over the top.
Over the top. On that note, we've been over the top, and I will wrap us up on YouTube for this week. So here we go. And look at that. The stinger works again. That's 2 for 2 today. My luck is good. Thanks everyone for joining us this week. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel to let YouTube know how much you like our content. And don't forget, we're here every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific. And look to your local time zones for your time zone to join us. And see everyone next week